format. We got some feedback, I think, from the commission after the last meeting. Next slide. So here was an attempt to take that and move it into what we have as total production versus for the year versus actual production. That's the top one. And the bottom is planned production to date versus actual production to date. And so you can see in a graphical format what's on the how things are stacking up compared to what we thought. So I think that's really the big change. What we'll do is I didn't really have anything else I wanted to highlight right now. We'll put this together and it'll be available on our website to obviously any of our customers, but we'll also send the commission a link. They can review that. Of course, if you have any questions, be happy to take those up. But go back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Hagemark. We have a minute. Any final questions or comments at this point? If you can be brief. Okay, thank you very much then. I think we'll close it up for today. It was a very good meeting. Thank you for everybody for attending. And we'll have our next meeting in August, which will be the planning meeting. So thank you and stay safe.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks.
All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I'd like to convene the July 20th, 2020 Single Family Design Board. May I have roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. This is Mary. I will take the roll call. We have Chair Miller,
Here.
Vice Chair James,
Here.
Board Member Farrell,
Here.
Board Member Motisha,
Here.
Board Member Richards,
Here.
Board Member Sweeney,
Here.
and Board Member Ziegler.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Everyone's online and no technical problems. Yay. Going to the first item of our agenda, public comment. Any member of the public may address the board up to 2 minutes of any subject within its jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Do we have anyone for a public discussion? Ellen, do we have anyone? If not, I know Jan has something she'd like to say.
Again, this is just a reminder, if you wish to speak from general items, you can raise your hand using the hand icon and I'll call on you. I do not see anyone who's raised their hand, so if Ms. Farrell wants to add her comment, we can, Timmy can move to the timer slide. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to discuss this, but I just wanted to say that after our last meeting, when the project came up about green roof in the high fire zone, and I was the one that made that motion to approve it, I was questioning about what the reasoning is why it wasn't allowed. And so I reached out to Amber Anderson, and but then I heard back from Joe from the fire marshal, and he gave me quite a interesting synopsis that it's all about the defensible space. Like we have in the high fire zone, you have to have the vegetation cleared back from your house. And so it kind of goes right along with that. If you have to have defensible space, why would you allow planting on the roof in a high fire zone? He said that even with sprinklers, sometimes with an advancing wildfire threat, the vegetation is all dried out anyway, and roof sprinklers will just be completely ineffective. He also made a note that the fire department does favor green roofs in urban and non-high fire settings, and it's only in the high fire areas that they are not allowed. So that was
Thank you,
it.
Jan.
Yeah.
Good to know. Anyone else have anything to say or any public comment? Ellen?
Mr. Chair, it looks like that was our last comment. And yes, I think that might have been more of an announcement. Just for future reference, I didn't mean to put you on a timer, Ms. Farrell, for an announcement like that. But yes, so long as you feel like you've been able to say what you need to say, we can move on to the next item.
Ellen, just as a quick logistical thing, when you say announcement, is it still something you would say around public comment, only we define it as an announcement? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. So let's move on to the approval of minutes for July 6th. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve those minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I think Fred won.
Okay. Whatever.
Oh, let's go through each item. Item number 1, 3239 Cliff Drive. Item number 2, 1822 Garden Street. Item number 3, 630 Miramonte Drive. It looks like all the items. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, this is Mary. I will take the roll call. We have Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted, can you come up? Is there something you need to comment about? I thought there was something that was supposed to be said that I said that should have been noticed.
Mr. Chair, I will make an announcement during item D on general business.
Oh, okay, very good. So let's move on to the consent calendar for July 13th. Ted, could you please, may I have a motion to approve July 13th? Consent calendar minutes?
Mr. Chair, I should still go through and read the motions, I believe.
Do the motions first and then make them, read the items and then make a motion?
Yes, so I'll read the motions on the previous consent minutes.
Okay.
So May 216 Santa Rosa Place. The motion was project design approval and final approval with comments. Item B, 827 Orange Avenue. The motion was to continue 1 week with comments. And those are the only 2 items on that agenda.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll move to approve that.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, who's that? That was Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, this is Mary. I will take the roll call. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler.
Yes.
All right, motion carries.
Thank you. Ted, can we review of July 20th for today for consent?
All right, sounds like there's a.
Sorry, I just ask everybody to go ahead and mute themselves except for the chair because we're picking up a lot of background noise.
Yeah, it sounded like a plane was going by there. Okay, so for the consent calendar for July 20th, item A was 827 Orange Avenue. And the motion was for project design approval and final approval with comments. Item B was 153 Rometto Road. The motion was for project design approval and final approval with comments. And then item C was 5 Rincon Vista Road. The motion was for final approval with comments.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve those
Or,
minutes.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Yes, this is Mary. I will take the roll call. Chair Miller,
Yes?
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha, Board Member Motisha,
Where'd he go? Oh, there you are.
I think he's muted.
Yes.
thank you. Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. So let's move on to announcements. Requests for applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items and appeals.
Mr. Chair, this is Ted Hamilton. I just have one brief announcement. regarding the proposed grading amendments to the building code. The proposed grading ordinance amendments will be reviewed tomorrow, Tuesday, July 21st at City Council at 12:30. So any interested board members or members of the public can details for how to join that meeting on the City Council website of the City of Santa Barbara.
I would definitely be interested, and I think Fred also. Fred, do you have something to say?
Ted, I just have a question. Are the recommendations going to tomorrow's ordinance committee similar to what the building official Andrew Stuffel discussed in the public meeting? Do you know?
Mr. Sweeney, I believe those are the proposed amendments that will be reviewed tomorrow. However, I don't have all the details in front of me currently.
So it'll probably be in a staff report we can look online.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Irma.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair and board member Sweeney, tomorrow at the ordinance committee, the proposed amendments to the ordinance, which are basically just options in terms of how to verify grading quantities, will be presented to the ordinance committee for a recommendation to council. And there is a council agenda report that was sent to the SFDB on Friday that you can review. It's really not very long. It's about 3 pages.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have just if I could follow up on that comment, the other one, and one other one. I don't know if any of you had time to go look at the video of the public meeting that Mr. Struffel held on this item on grading. So I did send a letter to him and copied Donovan. I think I copied to Brian Miller. I didn't copy to the rest of the board because I'm assuming with the Brown Act, I wasn't allowed to do that. But anyway, it was just some questions and a couple of comments. But one of the comments I made is Mr. Struffel did a really good job of explaining grading. You know, what does it really mean when we're looking at it? And so I'm suggesting, and I don't quite know how we do this, whether we have to write a letter or make a motion or just request staff, but I would love to have him come to our board at some point and give that same explanation and allow us to offer questions, because you know, oftentimes we're supposed to make findings on slope grading, et cetera. In fact, we do that all the time. You know, this morning we had consent calendar items that were on 20% grade issues. You know, fortunately, none of them were significant, but there are going to be some in the future, and we've had some already. So I think it might help all of us if we really understood what are we as board members supposed to be looking at. And I know some of us have grading experience because of our profession, et cetera, but not all of us are going to be, you know, really understanding what does grading mean, you know, what happens when you have to excavate for a foundation versus for a swimming pool, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing. The other thing that again, I don't quite know the procedure of how we ask for this. I understand at city council people can put items on the agenda if 2 members of the council ask for it. But this is to follow up on Jan's exploration on green roofs. And thank you, Jan, for doing that. But again, because you did it under announcements today, that's not an agendized item, so we can't have a conversation. I can't ask you questions, you can't comment, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering if in the future, we could also have the fire fella that you talked to come and talk to us about that issue in more detail, because I have questions. You know, I don't understand why the fire zone up like where you live, where Jonathan lives, which is on the Riviera, you know, it's highly exposed to fire. It shows up on the Edison fire maps, you know, endangered fire areas. But I don't know how that applies to TV Hill or there's a couple of streets on the Mesa that dead end with no turnaround, really narrow streets. They're very forested over, but they don't show up on, and on one street I can recall, we have 3 or 4 projects we've reviewed in the last few years, and that item has not come up, and we've had some public comment about the road's so narrow, where in the hell is the fire department? So I don't know how we ask for that, Ted or whomever on staff. Is there a protocol do we need to write a formal letter to each of those individuals to ask them to schedule in a meeting sometime?
Mr. Chair and Board Member Sweeney, typically what we've done, of course, we're using such a different forum now with our remote meetings, but typically what we've done is we've basically asked, in this case, it would be Andrew Stuffler of the building department and Joe Poirier or Amber Anderson of the fire department to come to your board for a discussion item and make a presentation on the items that you just outlined, Board Member Sweeney. So we can reach out to them and see if we can get something or a schedule for when they might be able to come before the board to give you that information. Yeah, and also I think that at this point for tomorrow's ordinance committee meeting with respect to the grading ordinance, I think that we might just see what the recommendation is from the committee to council, because one of the options is just to not do anything in terms of or I should say, to just keep it a status quo in terms of the way that the grading is verified. And I don't want to get really too much into it. This is announcements, and we're not supposed to have a discussion on items, so because it hasn't been agendized, so we'd be in violation of the Brown Act. But I do have your request, Board Member Sweeney.
That would be great. Yeah, if we could, I'm sure it'll take some time to get it scheduled, but that would be really good. Thank you.
Great. Can I ask a quick question? I'm not sure.
Yes.
So at the Planning Commission meeting a couple days ago or last week, they did bring up the CWPP did make a presentation, and maybe we could just have that forwarded to us so we could all see it. I mean, I watched it, but just so other people could be aware of it.
That's a great idea. We can do that.
All right, thank you. I look forward to how this is all working out with being on the computer. Okay, that I think concludes our subcommittee reports. I believe we can go on to our agenda item. And our first item is 802 East Calle L'Orealis. Do we have a representative for that project?
You do, Chair Miller. Brian Cornell is with you. I believe that Margie Grace also is with us to talk about the landscaping.
Here.
All right, thank you. Before we go on, since it's a new item, can Lisa, can you speak into the record what the project is?
Yes. I'll have, okay. 802 East Calle L'Orealis is here for concept review. The proposal is to construct a 4,855 square foot, 2-story main residence with an attached 3-car garage, a detached 1,200 square foot, 1-story ADU under a separate permit, and a new 20 by 60 foot outdoor pool. Site improvements include paving and improving the existing dirt access road with grading quantities of 650 cubic yards of cut and 100 cubic yards of fill. No appealable action will be taken at this hearing. Project requires neighborhood preservation, grading, and hillside design and slope lot findings.
Thank you, Lisa. So thank you, Brian, if you'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a unique property that certainly I never was fully cognizant of in my 40 years here. This is 30 acres, just shy of 30 acres at the end of Alomar. The address, as you see, is East Calle Morales, which is where the access comes from. If we could switch, Timmy, to the next slide. I also want to clarify, by the way, that 4,800 square feet does include the 3-car garage and a workshop area and laundry. So the actual living space of the house is about 3,600 square feet. So this gives a good sense of the property, at least from an aerial perspective. And you can see in the middle of this image is kind of a little oval shape, which is basically the ridge line of this hillside. And actually go to the next slide, Timmy, please. So this gives you, this shows in the light red line where the property boundaries are. And basically in that lower, where the right-hand property line is, the long right-hand property line, that essentially is about aligned with Alomar below. So now if you have orientation, again, that middle sort of oval shape is the actual top of this hillside. Should also mention that the house that used to be on the site, this was owned by the Kunst family for years and years and years. At the lower portion of the site, right in that little portion that is sort of a wedge of the property, is where the previous existing residence was, and that was destroyed, as you may have noted on the plans, in the Jesucito fire. So it right now is just sort of a burned hulk at this point. So there are no occupiable buildings currently on the site. Let's start now, if we can, Timmy, to go to the photos and have a little photo review of how you see this property. So that, of course, is the site. You can see Laurel Reservoir there behind us. Next slide. So this is basically the view from Alomar before you get to, or just past Foothill. And so that hillside that you see there is the hillside where that original residence that was destroyed by the fire. You actually, from this vantage point, can't see where we are proposing this new residence. Next slide. This then is from Calle Laureles, and again, you can see that predominant hill there, right above the truck is where the burned out residence is, and then straight ahead, that ridge beyond is where we are proposing to place the house. Next slide. So that's the top of Calle Laureles, which is the access point to the driveway going up. Next slide. The driveway that currently does serve, I think, 3 residences. There may be 4 along there that it serves. So this is the improved driveway as you begin to go up it. Next slide. And then this is actually at the near where that burned out residence was. I'm sorry, no, that's incorrect. This is down at the driveway, and I'm actually looking up. You can see just barely those little guardrails. That's the driveway that goes on up. Thank you. That's correct. So again, this hillside that we're looking at here is where that burned out house was. Next slide. So this is the driveway going on up. Next slide. This is a point where the driveway kind of splits into 2. This driveway that we're looking at here is going to be abandoned. Next slide. And then this is the going on up to the new residence. That's basically those guardrails you can see there that are on the left. Next slide. So then this reaches to the site, and when you, from that last photo that I showed you, you turn around the corner and you get to where the old house was, and then from there, there's a dirt road that gets you up to the home site that we are proposing. This is the top. It's interesting history. Back in the 60s, someone tried to develop this into a hotel, and they actually commenced grading for an underground parking structure, but it never happened. So it is pretty much a vacant site with just some scrubby vegetation. There is one nice stone pine, which I'll point out as we continue here. So this is looking due north. You can see there's beautiful views of the mountains to the north. Next slide. This is just looking across that plateau and some of the existing vegetation. Next slide. Basically, that is looking east. And then this is looking southeast, and is at kind of that little ridge road. That oval that I was talking about is basically a road that circles around the top of this site. But you can see, Timmy, if you can zoom in just a little bit on that, possibly. It's probably a little digitized, but it really is just unbelievable views looking out over St. Anthony's and the Mission straight to the harbor. And there you see on the left that stone pine that I mentioned. Next slide. And that's Bogey, my dog. So this is looking due south. So basically from the home site that we are proposing, this is due south down the Las Positas Valley. Next slide. And then this is basically looking west towards UCSB and out towards Gaviota. So it really is, it's, you know, it's, I certainly never knew that this was located here, and it's just extraordinary, obviously, in terms of the views. Next slide. So this is trying to get a few images of what you might see on the backside. I'll come back to what you can see from, we did some photo sims so we can look at locations down lower where you can see it. But this is going up San Roque Road past the reservoir, or towards the reservoir, and you can just see the hillside there basically to the right that we are proposing to place the house on. Next slide. And then this also is looking back at the reservoir and the hillside, basically, as you would see it from up towards the top of San Roque Road. Next slide. And then it's a little hard to see, but if we look just right in the middle of this image from way up on San Roque looking down, you can sort of see that stone pine that goes along the ridge. Timmy, I'm sorry I don't have the pointer, but it's basically just almost dead center, just a little left of dead center. No, up a little higher. So if you have the cursor follow the ridge, that's it right there. So that's the stone pine. So the home would be to the right of that. Okay, I think that is our last slide. See if, do we have another one? So we can go back to the plans. And actually, it might be helpful before I get into the details of the house. Timmy, why don't we skip to sheet A402 and look at some of our, just some of our long views so we can get a sense of from the city, from down in the flatlands, where you might see this. And I would suggest maybe we blow up. This is a little hard to see, I apologize, but maybe start with the middle image, which is from Peabody School. So it gives you an idea of how that home site is visible from Peabody School, and maybe just zero in on that top slide. Thank you. So we have superimposed, I know it's pretty hard to see, but we have taken the computer model and placed the house and the ADU at the top. To the right of the house, you can see that stone pine. See if Timmy can see it and point it out to us over to the right there. So that's the stone pine, kind of to give you again a sense of the scale. And then of course that brown hillside to the right is where the old original residence was located. You can kind of spot that by a few cypress along that location. So we could go back to the view that is on the left and zoom in on that. This is basically from the San Roque Bridge, and you can see this is another vantage point where you can see it. I will tell you, I drove all around town trying to find spots where you could see this site, and surprisingly, it's hard to see, I think in large part because there's a lot of vegetation between it and wherever the viewing point is. But believe it or not, there you can see the stone pine to the right on that ridge. That's correct. And then you can see the home, and then you can just barely see the ADU off to the left there. And then let's go to the final slide there on this sheet, which is the one to the right. This is just, driving along State Street there, just past the intersection where De La Vina comes into State. You can kind of see the site between these buildings, and again, we've superimposed that onto that hillside. So that gives you at least a sense of what you can see. Now let's go back to the floor plan. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing and I can't find it, so it'll stop soon. So this is the site plan. Timmy, if you'll point out that stone pine again as a reference point down there, and the pool is up from that, and then the home as you see. So if what we have done is we have oriented that the primary living space of the home at that angle, which is the perfect angle for viewing back towards the city, back towards basically the harbor view. And then the bedroom wing is essentially then at 45 degrees to that and facing due south out towards the Las Positas Valley and the islands. So we've created this entry element, which is sort of the tallest portion of the house, and then really tried to cascade the house down as much as possible. If you'll go to the next sheet, shows the floor plans a little more clearly. So we've tried to keep the square footage on the second floor as minimal as possible, the view being as extraordinary as it is. My clients wanted to get the view from their master bedroom as well as from the primary living space, dining and kitchen. So that's been really important to kind of keep the massing to where, as I mentioned, the roofs cascade down. You can see it's a large garage, and then the workshop and laundry room off to one side. And then we have essentially a game room, or what will be the family living space that is open into that courtyard that faces to the north and to the mountains. Next slide. So these are the elevations of the home, and really the one that is on the top right-hand corner is the south-facing view of the house. If you go down to the next elevation, Timmy, that's basically the elevation that would face towards that harbor view. Sun control is obviously very important up here, so we have a trellis element off to the southeast, and then we have a beautiful veranda that will provide shading for the bedroom wing that runs off to the west. Let's go to the next sheet. So these are the sections. The home is basically about 25 feet tall to the ridge, with the exception of that entry rotunda, I'll call it. It's a little bit taller, but we're well below the 30-foot height limit, and most of the building really is in the 16-foot to 15-foot height range, being one story. Next slide, or next sheet, sorry. So if we could zoom in on each one of these and start with the one in the upper right-hand corner. So that really, that is basically, if you're imagining looking up at this hillside, this is the view that you would see from the west. So kind of from San Roque Road as you're going up towards the reservoir. Then just scroll down to the image below this one. Then that is essentially that south hillside and what you would see along that ridge. So again, you can see how the roofs are cascading down. Next slide down below that, or next image below that. And then that's basically the view from that stone pine looking back up to the house. I haven't superimposed the pool or anything into that image yet. If we go to the ones that are over on the other side, this just gives you a sense again of the massing. This is sort of from the eastern hillside as you're coming up towards the garages. So this is what the neighbors to the east, the kind of view they would see. Next slide, or next image below that, I should say. So this is just how the north side of the home looks, and then that AUD or ADU, sorry, in the foreground. And then finally below this is just another sort of a close-up view of what the entry to that courtyard space is going to be. So what I'd like to do now, if I can, is just give Margie, she's the next slide or the next sheet, which is L1.0, and maybe have Margie just give you a sense of what her concept is for how the edge of this architecture is going to be treated.
Hi, all. All right, so we're reorient us to the site. We see the pool that's running along that ridge line that's kind of east-westish, that ridge line. We're going, thank you. We'll be working with native materials that are around the hillside already. We've got just small dry stack walls. They won't be higher than 4 feet, and they'll be draped with greenery. We have a little bit of lawn just around this pool. Vegetable gardens up in here terracing down. We actually like those on the north side so they don't bake too badly, but they'll still get good sun. And we move up, let's see, moving clockwise from there, counterclockwise, we hit an orchard area on one side of that drive that comes into the motor court, and then we skip over, we hit another orchard area. Then we hit the ADU. And then you see a lot of this golden is just, it's gravel with drifts of low plantings. This has to do with defensible zone. Quick, very low fuel, quick burning, not particularly a great place for embers to land because we've got a lot of gravel in there. And then the hillside, we've got, let's see, we've got a little bit of a deer fence running around the perimeter of this thing. It sort of looks like little X's and lines, and that deer fence is only, it's 8 feet high, but it's 5 feet, and then it's got a kink on it, and that's all done as a go-away color. For the hillside, it's painted that way, and then it's all in drought-tolerant native landscaping. Again, planted in drifts, such that we have broken fuel, not completely dense fuel. It'll be softened. Basically, the idea right now, when we look up, we see grasses. I think that's a relic of what the development was before. And we'll do sort of part grassland and part, chaparral looking stuff. But the idea is to have it just really, really blend into its surroundings.
Okay, thanks, Margie.
Oh, irrigation is all drip, only overhead is on the lawn. That's about it.
So Timmy, last couple of sheets are our site improvement drawings. Now, naturally, the civil engineer decided to turn this sheet 90 degrees, so I apologize. So we are now looking, rather than looking north, we're looking east. So you can see there the outline of where the proposed residence is, and then the road going up. So let's go now to the next sheet. So this is just showing what we need to do to improve that road to the fire department standards. Again, the road pretty much exists. but it's only, 10 feet, 12 feet at the most, and we need to make it 16 feet for the fire department. So the next sheet gives you kind of a sense of what the slope of that hillside is, and then the extent of what we are going to have to do with that drive. So we've got some low retaining walls. We've got some gravel, or I should say a boulder wall that's on the upside. And if we flip back to the last sheet, Timmy, it's a little hard to tell. You can maybe blow it up a little bit. No, that's that sheet. So starting basically right above the house, there's about 240 feet of that sloped boulder wall. You can just see it in kind of looks like sort of riprap along that edge. So from edge to edge of that is about 240 feet. The retaining walls that you see directly to the east of that boulder wall, the larger one is about 90 feet long. Then moving to the right, the next wall that you see is about a 50-foot section of wall. These again are all probably 3 feet or so in height. We're hoping to make these low enough to where actually 30 inches, so we don't have to worry about guardrails, but this is just conceptual at this point and gives you an idea of what is going to be done. There's not a lot of grading associated with this road. It's only about 680 cubic yards, I think. So again, it's for the most part, it is there, but there is going to have to be improvement. And then although Margie isn't showing landscaping on this, we obviously are going to soften this and provide landscaping so that once it's constructed, it'll blend back into the hillside. Go ahead, Margie, if you have any thoughts.
That's really, I'm sort of letting the engineers shake it out to the final iteration. Again, trying to nestle it down at the hillside some, get it as low as we possibly can to avoid guardrails, which will show up as an expense and a visual element. What I want to, we'll obviously have to do some planting that has to do with erosion on the new grading around the road. But the idea is 100% to blend it in. And then of course we'll be limited somewhat just to keep our fire truck access, clear and free and clear.
So you might recall that one photograph where we were looking at the beautiful view from the site and you could see my dog on that little dirt road. So if we look at the residence on this image here, you can actually see that road. That of course is going to end up that dirt road, but you can see it from the survey, obviously. So you can get a sense where that really is not at the edge of the slope. The edge of the slope is over probably about 8 feet or so from a practical standpoint from that road. And you can see that the closest point of the residence then is right at the edge of that road. And then we've really then tried to keep it, with the exception of that area right there, keep it off of the ridge line and orient it again towards that view. So I think that concludes our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Wow, what a great project. Ted?
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can open the floor up for public comment at this point. And let's see, if you are a member of the public and you wish to comment on this project, you may use the raise hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel. And when you click on that, we'll call on you and you will have 2 minutes to speak. Okay, and I don't see any members of the public with their hands raised. Mr. Chair, we did receive a written item of public comment. I will go ahead and read it.
Thank you.
Apologize for the delay. I had it pulled up, but it looks like I accidentally closed it out. So hang on a sec.
Where is
Okay, this item is from Barbara Holt. She and her husband own 517 and 555 East Calle Laureles, and she is also a successor trustee for 702 East Calle Laureles. It's pretty short, so I'll go ahead and read it. My family annexed this land into the city of Santa Barbara circa 1948 as the Johnston annexation. I've reviewed the plans and renderings for the proposed home, ADU, and improvements, and support the project. These proposed homes with a fire hydrant will bring much needed additional fire protection for our neighborhood. It is a very nice and much needed improvement for the site. The photos showing the existing view and proposed view from Peabody School are mislabeled and should be switched. Thank you, Barbara Holt.
All right, thank you, Ted. Bring it back to the board for questions. So I'm going to just go down the list and see who has questions. So Lisa, James, any questions?
I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Cornell that the grading from the road was the 680 cubic yards listed on the project description. It doesn't include the pool calculations, or if you could clarify
No,
that.
Right now, that's correct. We really have not assumed that there's any grading of any significance where the house is. We're trying to place that pretty much at grade, but it does not reflect the quantities that would result in the pool. I'm assuming that all of that dirt will remain on site. You know, we're going to try and distribute, you know, everything. Most of the dirt, the 680 cubic yards, is cut. So we're hoping that we can basically use that material and smooth out the area on top and not have to exceed that quantity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Farrell, any questions?
Just one. So at the very beginning of your presentation, Brian, you mentioned the size of the lot because it's not written down on our paperwork. How big is this property?
It's 29.35 acres, so it's almost 30 acres.
Wow.
Easy. Yeah.
We really don't need to concern ourselves with FAR.
No, it's the FAR would be tiny.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks. Joseph Motisha, any questions?
No, I'm very familiar with the property. No questions.
Thank you. Robert Richards.
Yeah, my only question directed to Margie, the landscape architect here. Is there intent to put any trees around this residence, or are you trying to, I saw there are some trees on your plant list. I was just wondering if they're going to be included around the home or how that will work out.
Yeah, we haven't gotten all the way through. We're still on conceptual here. The idea is to preserve views yet screen architecture from the city side. And we're definitely going to need some relief from both wind and from sun. And then there'll be an opposing push for, you know, don't do a whole bunch of fuel up there. So that plant list eventually is going to, you know, be honed by fire department requirements. And also this view sighting. The intention though is to have everything be super low water demand. We've got heavy clay soils up there, so there'll be things that are not on that we may like but aren't on the good fire fuel list. So I don't see lining the driveway with, you know, pairs of palm trees marching up the side, you know, that kind of thing that we don't particularly like to see on a ridgeline. I just see what it takes to just blend softly to the adjacent hillside, which again, I'm not convinced is native vegetation, you know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks for the info. That's the only question I had.
Thank you, Robert. Ed Sweeney.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have, as Brian would know, I will have several questions. First of all, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming we have purview over all 30 acres? not just the part that surrounds the house or proposed site? I don't know if you have an answer for that, but you can let us know. Brian, I'm trying to figure out, I drove up there the other day and got to the point where the two driveways split and there's gates. Are you improving the road all the way down to that point? I didn't understand that. I know the civil engineer kind of twisted the orientation, so I couldn't figure out how far are you going down to improve that road?
So this is probably going to be hard with Timmy. Go back to that last slide, actually, Timmy, and I think we might be able to answer with clarity. Other direction. Next slide, back, or next sheet.
There, yeah.
Okay, so the gate, you can see the residence that has kind of a, on the right-hand side there, that has some tile roofs, and the road bends around that residence, and right at basically at the property line there is where the gate would be. So the property line that's crossing that driveway coming up, Timmy, it's to the right of the house that burned down. So bring your cursor down, keep coming. So that's the drive that I'm talking about, and the gate is down at the property line that crosses it. Next property line down. No, I'm sorry. It's hard, isn't it? I wish I had the pointer.
Oh, okay, I see. I think okay, I'm starting to understand. So
there's a gate there. So we are not improving it. All that is all improved and 16 feet up to the area where you can see the darker lines show. And then if we actually go to the next slide, there's kind of a turnaround up there. There's a large amount of paving. So that's on your right, your lower right. So it's all improved to that point. So this is the extent of the road improvement.
Okay. And then that road improvement is going to be asphalt, I'm assuming?
Yes.
All the way up to the drive court, or are you going to do something different in the drive court?
Well, it's likely that the drive court will be something else. And then we're also going to have stormwater to contend with. So I'm not sure how that will ultimately come into play. I think, now that you mention it, Fred, we're probably going to need to put permeable paving wherever we don't have too much slope for it to function properly.
And I'm assuming you'll have to do a tier 3 scenario?
It is yes, I would have to assume that.
Okay. And then this is a general question maybe for staff, but I think I'm right. The county of Santa Barbara has a ridgeline ordinance, which plays off on the other ridge directly across to the southeast of this hill. But the city of Santa Barbara has no ridgeline ordinance, as far as I know. It's just a 30-foot zoning requirement, correct? Anybody know?
Yeah, Mr. Sweet, I believe there is not a ridgeline ordinance as required by the county. Irma, do you have an addition to that?
No, I was gonna, excuse me, Mr. Chair and Board Member Sweeney, I was gonna indicate the same thing. I'm not aware of there being a ridge line ordinance, but certainly we will double check and confirm.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure there isn't, but I just wanted to ask the question. And it's not like this building is really tall. Let's see, what else have I got? Oh, on the road itself. So down at the gate, are you going to enhance the gate at the entrance to this property? Is that going to be part of your scope of work, and then is there going to be any lighting along that road as you drive up, or is it completely dark at night?
Well, it's a good question, Fred. We haven't really discussed that. I mean, there are going to be some remediation on that road. There's some guardrails that have rotted away and will need some repair. But if we light it, I think it's going to be just minimal for safety reasons. And as far as the gate location, we haven't talked about that. I think we will want some kind of a gate, at the entrance to the property. But since that where the gate is now that you would have run into is not on our property, it would probably move up that road.
Okay. Thank you. And also the assumption is, because we've run into this before, I'm assuming that at the end of Cali Reales, where that little turnaround is before you start up the real narrow road, that indeed is a private road, unlike some other places in Santa Barbara where we've had property owners put up private road signs on a public street. I just wanted to make sure that that's really the case here. It's a private road, correct?
Well, no, I don't believe that. I'm trying to see from what I have. I think the cul-de-sac that's down there that has that little like sculpture in it, sort of a
yeah, right.
I think that is still in the public right of way from the plan. If we go to, Timmy, if you go to the second sheet of the set, which is the ortho photo sheet, and then zoom in on kind of the lower left corner of that. So all the way back to the beginning of the set. Probably takes a while to load.
Yeah, down in there. So that road appears to be private because it's only, well, maybe 16 feet wide.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I don't know why this isn't coming up. It's
further to the left is what you're talking about.
So right above, right to the, down by the word note, under ortho photo note, if you'll blow that area up, Timmy, you can actually see the cul-de-sac outlined in blue.
Yep,
and you can see and so you can see the city right-of-way does extend up and dead ends, and then it becomes a private drive once it's, so I guess a portion of that cul-de-sac is outside of the right-of-way.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
But then it is private going up from there.
All right, thank you. I'm going to get to the house in a minute. I've got one more site, maybe two more site questions. The older vegetation that we can see from Alomar when we drive, you can actually see it from Alomar and State as you drive up. The older site with all the vegetation where the house was before the fire, is that just going to be left alone, or is there plans to trim that out or clean it up, or is there any thought by your client about what they're going to do with that part of the property?
Well, we definitely need to clean it up. You know, I will tell you that, you know, because of the size of this property, it's possible that you could put a second residence on it. And so at this point, there is no intention. I think my client's goal is to really get the house built. In fact, it's likely that the ADU will follow, that the home will actually be built first so that they can occupy it. But you know, at this point, it really will just simply need up from a fire hazard stamp.
And okay, so that trails right into my next question, Brian. So is this property being at 30 acres, is it allowed to have other single-family homes on it? Or is that would take a new process with the city? You know?
Mr. Chair, this is Ted Hamilton. I can answer that question.
Okay.
So in this property is located within the RS1A zone. If they wanted to pursue an additional main residence, the applicant would have to apply for a performance standard permit. The base density only has one main residence. Then the state law allows additional accessory dwelling unit or units on top of that. That said, it does look like Mr. Cornell might be having some connectivity issues.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Ted. Can you hear me?
You appeared frozen for a second.
I was just curious about how they're dealing with it. And then maybe the last couple of site problems. You have the photovoltaics. I assume those are laying on or close to the ground. They're not up in the air, correct?
Yeah, that's my thought. Is that's kind of a little valley of sorts. I will tell you that one of the things we're going to need to do is to determine what our where there is an old ancient earthquake fault that runs through here somewhere, probably about where those solar panels are. We're pretty confident the house is well outside of any kind of a fault zone. Ironically, or maybe not ironically, that fault, if it is in that location, appears to run right through the dam for the reservoir. But that is a little natural depression where we think we can get a pretty large array without it being visible, but still getting the due south orientation.
Okay, so we're not going to see it like the county of Santa Barbara's array.
No.
And yeah, and I'm glad to talk about the road, and I'll come back with comments on the road and the lights. And then one last question on the site. Down at the pool, it appears to be a fairly small deck area around the pool, and then the rest is vegetation. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. We have a little bit of lawn there, but for the most part, Margie is bringing the sort of natural vegetation up close to the pool.
Okay, and then finally to the house, if we can go to what is that, the southerly elevation, I guess, the one towards State Street.
Yeah, that would be the south elevation, the one that's on the right.
Yeah. So I know this probably is SketchUp, I'm assuming. Doesn't have your fine hand, Brian.
No.
Are the windows punched, or are they sitting right out at the plaster, or what are you thinking?
Oh, no. I mean, this is obviously we're still conceptual here, but no, this is the owner's desire is to have this be a very traditional Spanish colonial revival. So the windows are going to all need to be recessed properly, and our approach on this sort of a thing is the larger the opening, the more recessed it would be. And as you can see, we have exposed rafter tails and a nice comfortable overhang for sun control. But that little portion that comes off of that entry rotunda, that would have a little tighter eave condition. So we'll sort of mix up that detailing, but the detailing will all need to be very authentic.
Well, and I appreciate that. One of the things that's bothered me a little bit about when I looked at these drawings the other day is the proportion of that cylinder. And I know we always squawk about height, and you and I have gone head to head on plate heights and so forth and so on. But in this particular case, I'm given where this house is, and thank you for all the photographs, although you didn't take one from Ariba Way. You can see it from that other hill. Anyway, I'm almost wanting you to take that cylinder up and let the top of the cone on the cylinder touch the 30-foot line. It bothers me that it's not snugging into the hip roof as I'm reading it from the south elevation on the right-hand side. I guess that's the one facing towards the pool.
Fred, hold on. Is this a question or?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm making comments. Questions. Okay. And I think then that's, the last one is on the deer fence. Do we have a picture of the deer fence?
Yeah. I'm with him. I think the hierarchy would look better.
Margie, you don't have any picture of the deer fence, do you? I think the idea is that it's really a traditional deer fence. It's going to be metal and disappear.
Yeah. We've got two options on it. Also, it might just be essentially split cedar rail used as post and 2x4 hog wire essentially. And then it's still in design because it might make more sense to do 2 5-foot ones with a spread in between. So what we want to do is just get it as low as possible, and it will be dropped off of the ridge. So it doesn't, you can't see through it or anything. We see over it from above, and from below it just blends into the scenery. And maybe they don't want that much deer fence. I don't see growing orchards and kitchen garden without some sort of protection. So it may wind up only on this, north side, more or less. So
the
the
other
detail
thing
of that will be worked out.
The thing that Margie and I have discussed is we really don't want the deer fence to follow a topographic line we'll want it to sort of meander and, you know, not appear to just create a straight line.
No
across the-
lineation to it really. And again, we might do some gerrymandering of it on purpose specifically to accomplish that. It's pretty conceptual at this point. Still waiting for all the pieces architecturally to shake down. We're in pretty good shape. And then another round with the clients just to see if I'm on track, and we'll go from there. But the intention is all of the retaining walls are dry stacked, and they're just, you know, they're battered, and they're again, the ones that are sort of linear are showing up on the opposite the cityscape side, so that we blend them right into the contour of the hill, and they really can't be seen from anywhere. Ditto with that fence.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Thank you, Fred. Jonathan Ziegler, do you have any questions?
Not really. I want to know what a ridge line thing is, but I can deal with that later.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have no questions at this time, so let's move into comments. So I'm going to go down the list again. And Lisa James, do you have any comments?
Yes. My comment would, I'm getting background noise there, be that I'm really excited to see the development of this project, and it seems very well suited and appropriate for this hillside, and that Mr. Cornell's put a lot of sensitivity into the orientation and the size, and really looking forward to seeing Margie's development of the landscape. So I have positive comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Jan Farrell?
Just agreeing with Lisa. I think it looks like a fabulous project, and I didn't even know that this area existed. And I drove up to that little cul-de-sac where the private road, but I stopped there because I didn't want to go onto the private property. But I'm amazed at what is up there on this hillside, and what a great house this is going to be. So very positive.
Thank you, Jan. Joseph Motisha, comments?
Yes, like I commented before, I grew up on Cali Lorales, so I'm very familiar with the property. Spent a lot of years roaming those hills when I was in my third, fourth grade. The other house was down below towards the southeast, I guess, that was burnt out. This was right on top of the hill. It never had a house right on top of the hill. Yeah, I think it got good potential, and I'd like to see the start of the elevations of what the traditional house is going to, Spanish traditional house is going to look like.
Okay, is that it?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Joe. Robert Richards, any comment?
Yeah, I'll echo the previous comments. I think it's a great project. It seems to fit in well on the hillside where it's proposed. I mean, it's a really large site, and really see that sitting there on the top of the hill. And I asked the question about the trees because it seems like maybe a few well-placed trees would fit in well around this home. So maybe at the next iteration, that's something that could be looked at. But apart from that, I appreciate the project, and I give positive comments towards it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Robert. Fred Sweeney, comments?
Oh, now I can comment. I'd like to go back to that. I'd like to go back to that elevation on the south. We could. So yeah, Brian, as I got out of questions and into comments, but on that cylinder, I think that ought to go up. And then I think that maybe you ought to treat that little cylinder, give it a little extra architectural pizzazz to it. I think the house deserves it. And also, as we'll see it from the city, it will have twinkling lights from the windows at night. And I think that tower could be very interesting if it's treated a little bit more traditionally like we see other towers that Lockwood DeForest or not Lockwood DeForest, but G.W. Smith and et cetera. So I would just encourage you to think about that. I don't know what your client's budget is, but given the amount of money they're probably going to pay for this, a little extra work on the tower would be great. I'm going to be interested in how we see the roadway dealt with, et cetera. The folks that are going to live in this, that are looking directly out of those windows and doors off the bedrooms, looking directly across the city towards the Borough Beach, are going to see the opposite approach, where we have a home that's got Christmas tree, palm trees every year. So I'm glad that we're not doing that on this property. So, and I agree with my colleagues' comments on the other approaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Jonathan Ziegler, any comment?
No, I'm okay with it. What I see now, it looks pretty darn good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, for me, my only follow-up is I tend to I think it's a fabulous project. I think you really, like Jan said, I didn't know this property existed. That such a large property would be still around in this area. And I'm really happy it's kind of captures the essence of the Santa Barbara look in a very prominent position. And I think the landscaping is extremely sensitive to the high profile of the property. So I'm very supportive of it. So those are my only comments. So with that, anything else? Otherwise, would someone, let's see, it's here for just comments, right? Only comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is only here for a concept review.
All right, thank you. Would someone like to draft a motion?
Sure, I'll be happy to make a motion.
Thank you.
The board would like to send this project on with very positive comments. We appreciate that you've given us such a detailed presentation and feel that the home is sensitively planned with the topography and the views from the city in mind, and that we would appreciate seeing the landscape plan develop with what kind of trees will be planned, and possibly look at the new entry gate at the next iteration. And if you would like to return to us at 2 weeks to full board, would that be?
Can you guys hear me?
Is
Yes.
that Brian? Yes.
Yeah. Why don't we just continue it indefinitely? We've got that some work to determine the location of that earthquake fault and other things to be ready for project design approval. Is the board, do you want to see this before we come back for project design approval once we check off all the boxes?
Well, I don't understand. What's the question again, Brian? Sorry.
The question is if we can just continue it indefinitely and then assume that the next time we see you, we'll be ready with all of our reports and things for project design approval and take a shot at getting PDA if that's possible.
Brian, this is Fred, if I may. This is,
Yes.
and Mr. Cannell, thank you for your comments, because this is a detailed but important part of the motion being made. This is at the point where we decide a project. If we're not comfortable, we have given comments for them to return to the full board or whatever. But it's also the point, if we are comfortable, then in this motion, we would give the applicant some indication that we are in fact ready to give them project design approval at their next visit. So that should be some part of the wording in the motion if that's the desire of the motion maker. That then allows the applicant to do necessary work to come back for what will be posted as a project design approval review.
That's what we'd like. Thank you.
I will add that to my motion that when Mr. Cornell returns, that we will be looking to give the project design approval.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. Joe Matusha.
Okay, so under discussion, I just want to be curious, do you want to have any kind of verbiage including the tower, or do you just want to leave that up to Brian? That you brought up, Fred.
I think we can leave that up to the designer. We would have to make a decision, as long as he doesn't go past the 30-foot zoning requirement. We would have to make a decision whether, if he moves that tower up, collectively all of us are in agreement. I may be the only one. And also then it gives him some ability to deal with the fenestration of the openings in the cylinder, et cetera. So I think we should leave it up to the design architect, and then just to be sure that when he does come back, and if we choose to give the project design approval at that point, we may want to make a statement about the acceptability of the height of the building.
Great, thanks, Fred. The reason I bring that up is that was the comment I was going to make, and you kind of said the same thing I was about to say. So that's great. All right. With that said, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, this is Mary, Commission Secretary. I will take the roll call vote. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to item number 2. We're about 20 minutes late, so anyway, the address is 414 Yankee Farm Road. Do we have a representative for this project?
Mr. Chair, this is Ted Hamilton. I am currently facilitating Mr. Wade Moosley's entrance here. Okay, so Wade, I just sent you a webcam request.
Hey, Michael Holiday just showed up.
Michael Holiday.
Michael, you.
Okay, Michael, I'm sending you an unmute request so that we can hear you.
Hello.
There you are. Okay,
hello, everybody.
Wade, test your audio as well, please.
You want to see if you're gonna? I'll be presenting everything today, but Wade's
Okay.
there.
And the other board members, if you want to close your cams right now, that'd be great.
So if you, as far as presenting, if you want to open up our submittal package.
And Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
so,
Mr. Chair, this is Ted Hamilton. We should read the project description into the record.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I will do that right now. It's a continued item. It's a proposal for an interior remodel and a 92 square foot addition to an existing 4,738 square foot single unit residence located in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. Project includes demolition of existing 1,153 square foot garage to construct a new 848 square foot detached 2-car garage with a pool equipment room and a storage room. Proposal also includes a new outdoor pool, raised wood decks, relocation of an existing driveways, and landscape improvements. The proposal total is 4,532 square feet of development on a 51,574 square foot lot on the Hillside Design District is 89% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested. Project requires neighborhood preservation and hillside design and sloped lot findings. Project was last reviewed January 6th, 2020. So please proceed.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, we did present this project back in January to the board, and we got caught in a lot of the COVID-19 fallout, so it's taken us a lot longer than we'd like to be back, but we're excited to present this to you today. We want to talk about the changes that we addressed as far as the staff comments. I don't know if staff wants to review those comments or not as far as what we're going to talk about today. Or do you want me to try to do that, Ted?
Mr. Holliday, it's up to you what you're what you'd like to do in your presentation. So if you would like to just go ahead and talk through the project, and then if you have any questions about staff requirements, feel free to ask me and I can do my best to address those.
Ted, this is Fred. I have a question. Typically, when we were in the previous world, when we had a returning item, there was always comments from the board on the previous action. So I'm curious, because this has been a while, in addition to staff comments, do we have, oh, there they are, yeah.
The minutes, thank you, Fred, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
so
just our comments from last time so we can kind of focus on what Mr. Holliday is going to present. Thank you.
yeah, so you can, yeah, Mr. Holliday, kind of go through the minutes too, show us how you address those minutes. So thanks, Fred.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we wanted to start with, where we left off, because we've tried to incorporate all the issues that are brought up and then also make some refinements. But they talked about the removal of the existing garage from the setbacks and improvement. I'll review that. But the vernacular, the architecture, the dormers, which has actually gone away. Unfortunately, we've done a value engineering and reducing the scope of the project. So a lot of this it's still consistent with it, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We are still reducing the 3-car garage to a 2-car garage that's within the setbacks. The standing seam metal roof is going to be on the barn structure that we'll talk about, so that is remaining. But on the rest of the house, it's going to be what's existing, which is architectural grade asphalt shingle. The Tier 3 stormwater management plan, we've done a lot of planning along those lines, and we're going to talk about that along with Courtney Miller, who's our landscape architect. This parking issue, really the primary issue and the only real neighborhood feedback that we got that was request, there's really almost unanimous support for the building architecture and revisions, but it was regarding parking. So we're going to talk about that with Public Works and with transportation, how we have provided for that. We're going to show you some examples of the lighting, and the neighbors were very appreciative of the overall design. And as we mentioned, the project that we presented to you last time was 94%. The project that we're presenting to you today is 89%. So essentially, after we did a preliminary construction cost analysis and got our general contractor involved in the project, the owner decided to scale back a lot of our architectural work, which is what you're going to see today. So it's essentially in keeping with what you saw previously, it's only smaller. So Ted, if you could go to our presentation, we can kind of walk you through. I guess if you want to kind of zoom in a little bit on the exterior elevations, I can, yeah, that little part right there, I can show you what's changed and what hasn't changed. Before the, am I able to get the pointer, Ted, to control the pointer, or are you going to have to do that?
Mr. Holliday, staff member Timmy Bolton is controlling the plans for today's meeting, and applicants unfortunately don't have the ability to take over mouse and keyboard for the presentation. You'll have to kind of talk us through how you'd like to say, and then we'll do our best to get to it quickly. Please note there is just a little bit of a lag time because we are dealing with opening large files over, the internet. So there may be a bit of a lag.
Okay, absolutely, no problem. So essentially, all of on the upper elevation, all of what is there on the right-hand side, including the existing roof, where the center of the house, all the way to almost the left-hand side of the project is existing asphalt shingles that are there. So one of the major changes is the cost of ripping off that roof and structurally upgrading and the seismic requirements for shear walls was cost prohibitive. We were spending millions of dollars that the client just didn't want to spend. So the essential bones of the new project are expanding out the left end where you see the little trellis element on the left-hand side. I don't know if you can, yeah, right around there. That is new. That's being added to the existing. But the reason that the metal roof went away is because all of that existing asphalt shingle is there. So we saved about $1 million by just scaling down the scope of our roof renovation and just popping that area out and cleaning up the forms, essentially trying to work with most of what's there on the existing house. So that's on that upper elevation. If you can go down to the lower elevation, we are keeping the barn structure and the standing seam metal roof there. So that whole piece is, as you saw it before, virtually unchanged. And the house to the right is essentially a cleaned up version of what's there. So that as I walk you through the plans and the elevations, that will hopefully guide you to kind of thinking what's changed and why has the project actually gotten smaller and less intensive from at least an architectural perspective. We're doing a lot with the site, and by the way, the house was so large originally at 94% FAR that we couldn't really add anything new. So once you got into renovating a 50-year-old house, that's really what drove the cost kind of out of the roof. We also did some due diligence with our structural engineer and the soils engineer, and that's really just became sort of cost prohibitive to try to do more than we had the budget to do. If we can go on to the next, zoom out and go on to the next page. These are some site photos, and I think if you want to maybe zoom in on that aerial on the upper right to kind of give you a little bit of context, one of the things that's really exceptional about this site is it's a very large site area. You can see Braemar, you can see Yankee Farm, but you can see that very large paved driveway that goes right up into the center of the site, which is one of the things that we are all removing. Courtney will talk about this a little bit later on when we talk about the impervious area that we're increasing, but almost 10,000 square feet of impermeable asphalt and different other hard surfaces we're removing with this project and making it user-friendly and outdoor garden space and pedestrian space. If you scroll to the left a little bit, you can just get a sense for what's there. This is what let's show them this is what the site looks like. So I said, we're just kind of cleaning up the existing building, removing this asphalt that's here in the front and some of the stone there. We want to try to use what we can for a natural sandstone, and maybe look at one of the other photos on the side. Yeah, probably the street view is a really good, right below that image. Yeah, right there. There's a huge 3-car garage with a flat built-up roof that's really out of character completely. It was built at another time. We're still removing all of that, and that's where our new barn structure is going. So it's a little bit of a balance to keep the bones and the best parts of the existing house, and then completely removing the pieces of the home that we need to get rid of. So that pretty much covers the context of what's there. Again, you guys, we went through this in a lot more detail last time. Let's go to the next sheet. And zoom in a little bit on the site plan. You can just kind of see this is existing site plan, and you can see the amount of impervious area there on the entire site. Yeah, all of that is going away. And then the driveway up on Yankee Farm Road is really sort of awkward. The slopes are not really pretty non-functional. And we'll show you in a little bit what we've done to kind of address all of that. And that little sort of awkward angle 3-car garage that's kind of going on the upper left, yeah, that's all being removed. So we're keeping all of our slope roofs and stuff and other elements to match. Let's go to the next page. This is I'm going to kind of generally summarize this, and then we'll let Courtney come back at the end and talk about the landscaping. But This is the proposed plan, which is very much in keeping with what we showed you initially. A couple significant refinements. As you can see, we've removed the entire asphalt circular driveway that was in the middle and we're replacing it with permeable landscape. We do have to keep that little entrance down there in the lower right-hand corner for fire department access. We ran our 150-foot fire hose analysis of the whole structure, and we can't do it any other way. So we're keeping a little bit of that. We actually were hoping we could get rid of it, but we can't. We met with the fire department and there was no other way. If they have to, they'll park a fire truck there and go up, carry it up through the pathway that's defined there to run a fire hose up to the far sides of the building. On the left side, so that's essentially Braemar, we have to leave that there. There's no other way to do it. And the fire department has agreed there is no other way to do it. So that's why part of that is left there. And transportation asked for us to get rid of it, and we'd actually like to, but we can't because of the fire department requirements. On Yankee Farm Road, that's a little bit of we've really done a lot of work to significantly listen to the neighbors' comments. They wanted some additional parking along Braemar. We don't need it. All we need is 2-car parking spaces, and that demand is fully met in the garage, the little white box up above. All we need is two parking spaces, and we meet the requirement. But to address the neighbors' comments, we've added 2 parking spaces right alongside Yankee Farm, and those I'm going to let Courtney. We'll get into that a little bit more later. Transportation has asked for more parking there. They wanted actually 80 feet. There's 40 feet there essentially for 2 cars, which was more than what the owner really even wanted. But they said, let's just have it. We could use it occasionally. And the precedence for Yankee Farm that we think is positive, it creates these little parking pockets up Yankee Farm. So if you had a series of these up and down this street, probably 95% of the time there won't be cars there. So it allows people a little bit wider driveway area because Yankee Farm is relatively narrow. So that's a significant improvement from what you guys saw last time, because before we had a driveway that was actually within the front yard setback that the city said they wouldn't support. So we had to do a whole bunch of back and forth. In addition to that, we have 2 front yard setbacks. So there's a 35-foot setback for the garage structure from the center line of road structure. Yeah, up there. So we have, I mean, you always get 4 cars there behind the 2 cars in the garage, plus 2 cars parking space out on Braemar. So we felt like, we really tried to go above and beyond normal call of duty to provide adequate parking. I'm going to let Courtney walk us through all of the back issues because there's a really sort of beautiful outdoor pools and hardscape and patio areas, but I'm just going to stay focused on the architecture and the planning issues. If you want to zoom in a little bit on the house, we can talk about what we're doing to improve all of this area. The enhanced paving outside of the main restaurant area in the front, you can look at that. And maybe go over to the left a little bit. The scope of our project, since we're only adding 92 square feet, it essentially is that popped out area there outside the kitchen, right below the word residence. So that's going to be an interior dining room. There's so much square footage that's existing to this house, we just sort of repurposed it. But that exterior enhanced paving area and trellis is really going to be, pretty nice. It's going to really open the house up to the south elevation, and there's some great views of the ocean from there. And as you can see, we stepped it down with some stone curbs and some stone walls and a walkway and water feature. That then if you go over to the left a little bit, you'll see why the parking, the guest parking makes sense, because it creates a sense of entry with a little small gate there out to the west side of the site. So essentially everything in white is existing except for that little pop out to the south, which is what our proposed project is. And then if you scroll up just a little bit, you can see how we've dealt with the exterior area with the garage, the pool equipment, and the storage room. So all of that is within, is basically as you saw it last time. One of the issues that came up, and I don't know if we're going to get into this today, but we are requesting project design approval, is the trash, recycle, and green waste two of those bins right there are within the dotted line, the front yard setback. So if we have to, we can rotate those right up against the building and everything works. So we think we can address all of the requirements that staff just sent back to us for PDA approval. So let's zoom out for a minute. That's kind of an overview of the site and the building improvements. Like I said, I'm gonna let Courtney talk about this when I'm finished commenting on the architecture. Let's go to the next sheet. We'll skip over that one. This is Courtney who can talk about the landscape and the hardscape. Here's a tree removal plan that she can talk about as well. Let's go to the next page. There's yeah, here we are talking about lighting. We've got a lot of detail. I'm going to let her talk about the lighting for the exterior, the landscape and hardscape, and I'll talk about the building architecture lighting. Let's go to the next sheet. Okay, so this is essentially what's being removed. Everything in red there is essentially what's being demoed. So a lot of it is interior demo, a lot of it is surface and patio demolition, and then the second floor, just sort of reworking the existing. There's a tremendous amount of floor area on the existing first and second floor that we can work with. So that just gives you a sense for what's coming off. We can go to the next page. And this is a roof plan. This is what we had to do this, just so you're wondering what we were up to over the last, well, COVID probably added 3 months to the process, but we had to really analyze what roofs were interconnected. And so we've analyzed which roofs are coming off and which roofs are staying on. And that's really when we came up with the fact that we have to stay with the exact asphalt shingle roof that's there right now, because we just can't afford to put a metal roof on everything else. So just some detail and more demo oriented. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the proposed floor plan. Yeah, you can just kind of zoom into all the overall. And this kind of shows you, this is our Revit plan, but it just sort of shows you the area of the house. The upper portion in the upper left-hand corner is the new 2-car garage with a pool room and storage area. Yeah, so all of that is exactly what you've seen before. And it's all now behind the setback. The existing condition actually is in front forward of the setback. Yeah, there's a lot of area there. The lower part of the house, just sort of, again, trying to work with the best of what's there. Existing, the only real addition, yeah, if you want to kind of enlarge that a little bit, we can look closer at it. The only real addition is the dining room addition, that little piece right there. Everything else we're sort of repurposing and reusing. The existing guest room, kitchen, living rooms, cleaning it up. We are adding some exterior decks right off the living room area and the patio. So those are some new areas. Again, low level, they're only 2 steps up. Existing bedroom 1 and 2 and the study room, along with the baths, are kind of a rework of what's there. And then that great room to the south, we're cleaning that up with a new stair, laundry area. And yeah, that just sort of goes up to the second floor, which you can zoom in just up above. Is just being cleaned up. Let's see, I guess is that on the next page? Yeah, there we go. And this just shows how the master bedroom is being laid out. You come up, there's a little study at the top of the stairs, a master bath, closet, and an office. So again, most of this is reworking existing exterior conditions. And so that's the proposed second floor. Zoom out. The roof slopes, we're working with what we have. The roof slope of the garage is a little bit steeper because it really needed to be to be convincing. All of the other slopes are a little bit random, which is originally why we wanted to remove them and make them all consistent, but it was just cost prohibitive. We can come back to this if you got any questions. Next slide, please. These are some computer images that show, you can zoom in on either one of these and kind of give you a sense for what the existing house is. This, we've scanned the model with a 3D LiDAR scan. So essentially everything that you're looking at on the right-hand side has been modeled over the existing house, but cleaned up. So we're just really making it consistent. There's a lot of inconsistencies with detailing and gutters and rafter tails, and we're just trying to make everything as consistent as it can be with a farmhouse, which is really interesting. This area goes back to a rich Yankee Farm Road. It's got a lot of history with traditional ranch style structures. The new trellis element is just a painted wood trellis. Yeah, you can see it's sort of freestanding. It doesn't touch the building, and it's going to be, we're going to have some lighting concealed up in that, but it just provides a little bit of shade out there on the south side of the building. This faces directly south, so they get a pretty straight shot all day long of the sun. So it kind of softens that little area on the south side of the dining room. Next slide, please. This is some 3D modeling views of the proposed new barn structure, which we really felt like the existing house, the existing 3-car garage is an extension of the white, kind of white on white, not even board and bat siding. So we really felt like this whole project was built originally over time. There's at least 3 different additions to this house. So we felt like this new addition should carry on in that same capacity and look like it was built at a different time. And plus, we didn't want to overwhelm the site with so much white building. So this was going to be a natural recycled barnwood structure with a standing seam metal roof on top of it, roll-up doors, and just give you make it look like it was actually built over time and have the appearance. Now, the landscape's going to be much more lush. We just did these 3D models in our office just to show the architectural mass bulk and scale, and also the lighting. We'll get into that a little bit more. Tried to be real consistent with how we thought about the lighting. Next slide. These are the exterior elevations. They're not a lot. They're all line accurate and shadow accurate, but the renderings kind of show a lot more. I don't want to spend much time on this. Let's go to the next slide. What we did was we just rendered up these elevations. So we can zoom in on this a little bit. It kind of does a better job of showing you exactly what's being proposed. And if you drop down to the slide, the image right below this, it's sort of a line drawing where we've actually called out all the materials and finishes and just kind of cleaned up that roof line. It's actually about 18 inches lower roof line than what we showed you previously, but that's what we had to work with because there were just no options. All of these colors, materials, and finishes are keyed on our color and materials board that I'm going to show you in just a minute. Next image, next slide. This is the west elevation, pretty much the same thing. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. So there's the actual line drawing. We've got our shadow and solar angles calculated there. We've got the setbacks shown. We've got the materials shown, building heights shown overall. Pretty much, like I said, we're starting with so much existing, we're trying to just reuse it. And the upper color image shows what we're wanting to turn it into. Next slide. Same thing here, line drawing down below, color rendered elevation up above. Just working a lot with what we've got. Some of these windows are just being slightly adjusted on the house. On the new portion of the house, which is in the center, we've really cleaned up where if you look where you can kind of see through the house there, that's where the living room is. Yeah, so those windows and decks, so you can see those little low decks, very low there, and the kitchen are really where we wanted to spend the money. The client wanted to really make the family areas the most usable areas, so we've opened those up quite significantly to the site, and you'll see why in a minute when you see what a fantastic landscape plan we've got. But this just shows the north elevation. Next slide. And then here's the east elevation that you really can't see because it's covered up so much by trees, but you can see the backside of the garage, which actually has some sliding barn doors that open up. They don't actually show up in the color rendered image. We probably should put the sun around on the east side, but that little barn door opens up so the garage can open out onto this courtyard. You'll see why in a minute when we talk about the landscape and hardscape improvements. But this is pretty much the 4 exterior elevations and the reworking of the existing structure that's there. Next slide. Here's the barn. We've kind of gone round and round on this. It's a 2-car garage essentially with a loft area. It's not a habitable loft, it's just open because we love the proportion and scale of this. On the street front side, it's going to have roll-up garage doors with glass windows up high. And we've got some material call outs on that. Kind of really trying to not have a bright white structure, which is there right now. That west sun comes around and just blasts the building and just reflects right back in the neighbor's eyes. So we're trying to do something that's much softer and will weather over time and kind of continues that the concept of the whole compound of structures being built over time. The north elevation in the upper left just shows how we've kind of just worked that out. There's a little window up there to let the heat out, but that's the pool equipment building and the storage room. And then on the south side of the building, which is right below that, that faces back towards the main house. So kind of like this idea that when you're inside the house, you're able to look out and see different things and see buildings that don't look all the same. Feels more like a compound, a ranch compound is really what our concept was. Next slide. Is there a next slide, or is that our last one?
Mr. Holliday, it appears that that is the last page of the PDF.
Okay. So the next thing I would want to do is just talk a little. We submitted this online, and so I said put it up. They told us to put it up in front of the cam. So I'm going to just hold this up for a moment to talk about colors and materials. Everything, since everything is existing, it's essentially board and bat, and because it's high fire, we're trying to match that existing board and bat, but also, keep it consistent to the board, the original 1x12 and the 2x bats that were on there. So it's going to be a hardy plank material, pretty much similar to what is shown right there. And the
Michael?
windows are, yes.
Brian, sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Chair, we can't hear you anymore. I don't know if you muted yourself accidentally.
I did, sorry. If you can kind of just wrap it up a little bit, and then we can come back to questions and anything else you want to just make high points for real quick, that'd be great.
Okay, sure. This is the last thing. So anyway, I just want to show you, we've got a full detail here with the metal roof all called out there, the board and bat siding. We've got the lighting here shown and the stone. So if there's any questions on this, there's the lighting, but I'm going to let that, and then here's the asphalt shingle roof. So sorry for covering all, just want to make sure you understood everything. With that, I'd like to let Courtney talk about the landscaping and hardscape real quick, and then that concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So Michael ran through kind of the big points, and what we have here today is a slightly revised design. So if you could zoom in on, let's start with the rear yard, and I'll try to quickly just overview on the changes. And then we have a couple more sheets to present. Changes since the last time we came, we did integrate the spa into the pool. So what you see now is just a simplified rectangular pool with the spa in it. We've also increased the amount of stone paving in the rear yard. Previously, we had a lawn on the south side of the pool, and there was a desire from our client to have more access into and around the pool. Also, as we've continued to develop the rear yard design, that pool started, the lawn started to get narrower and narrower. So it started to feel a little silly. And so what we've got is just sort of a combination of stone paving and planters that are all strategically placed to allow for views through the backyard and into the house. And also there was a desire from our client to have a view as you enter into the front door of the house, all the way through into the backyard. So otherwise, other elements over to the east side or plan right are largely the same. We have a little not a fire pit. We have a little fireplace wall there with two big olive trees on either side. We have kind of an informal vegetable garden area, which is the rectangular gray shape there. And we have some wood decking off the north side of the house at all the exit points, and that coordinates with the wood deck at the outdoor kitchen, which is just on the upper left side of the yard. We are dealing with some grading back here as well. There's quite a bit of fall. So we have a stone retaining wall that's proposed that spans from the garage building over to the east property line. Above that, we're proposing a vegetated swale, and you'll notice on the plan, anything that's sort of that light blue color, those are our stormwater BMP elements. So we have rain gardens for infiltration, swales for conveyance and treatment, and we're working closely with the civil engineer to address Tier 3 BMP requirements. So if you want to move to the left, plan left, I can talk about the driveway. So the other big change from the last time we were here is, of course, the driveway and the vehicular circulation. Previously, we had sort of a linear drive that connected back down to Yankee Farm about halfway down the property, and then connected back to the driveway that you see here. So we really simplified the design and reduced the amount of hardscape, which is great. What you see here is a gravel driveway. We're looking at using a product, I think it's called Gravel Lock. It's sort of like an epoxy that binds the gravel, and hoping to work with city staff to get their approval on that. We'll also have permeable pavers at the apron, and then also where that driveway intersects with the garage. But we really like the use of informal hardscape materials on this property, just because we're looking to really implement that sort of ranch heritage on the property. So if you could move the move down to the lower part of the plan, please. So you can see on the, oops, why don't you zoom out a little bit? Thank you. So meadow area is largely the same. We have our existing flag and cow in the middle. And we're looking at doing a custom, I think, native flowering meadow mix with S&S seeds. So that'll be just low growing, kind of a mix of different colors of grasses and flowering plants. The pink trees throughout this whole area are ornamental orchard. And if you recall from the last meeting, we really liked kind of the history of this whole region in having orchard trees. And we liked that as a design element. So what we're proposing are flowering, small flowering trees that are not food bearing. So they'd be purely ornamental. And a couple of strategically placed oak trees, and those are the big green symbols towards the bottom of the plan. And those are specifically intended to address some screening and in particular, as you come up Braemar Drive, I'm sorry, if you come up Yankee Farm Drive from the south, there's sort of a hole in between the existing stand of trees along Braemar. So we're looking to kind of block that view directly into the house. Otherwise, another change that we have is we've introduced a perimeter fence around the property. So I don't know, Timmy, if you can see the symbol there, and just kind of, it'd be helpful if you could just do that. Yeah, just follow the hand all the way around. And it goes up and then connects back with the house by the driveway. So we have an image on the next page that I'll show you that speaks to the height and the material for that. Bottom left. And we're looking at a pretty simple double-sided design. There's some images just above this drawing that speak to it, but we're looking to match the wood that Michael's team has implemented on the garage building. So cedar with a kind of a natural stain or, you know, basically matching what's on the garage. And in front of that, we're looking to implement very informal plantings on the street side of that fence. So informally placed things like echium. Would love to do some grasses, but I understand from our work with the fire department that they won't allow the Muhlenbergia, so we'll have to come up with something else for that. But informally arranged low water use plantings there. And then if you could go back to the plan just briefly, a couple more points, I think. We've implemented 2 parallel parking spots along Yankee Farm. So if you could move up the plan. Michael spoke to that just briefly. And these are specifically located in this area of along the street. This is kind of the narrowest part of the road. And so we were looking to provide some relief so that people could pass and maneuver around, but also provide parking for the project. So there's just, we're proposing permeable pavers there. There is some slope to contend with along the shoulder of that road. So it's about a, 18-inch to 2-foot change in elevation from the roadway, about 10 foot in to where we're showing the edge of the parking. And I believe that might have covered it. The other improvements in front of the, on the south side of the house, the front terrace and the seating area below has just had minor refinements. And then you can see we have another swale that's intended to be kind of a double duty, maybe a water feature and stormwater treatment just below the front entry walk. Let's go to the next page and then I'll try to wrap it up. I know I'm taking too much time. So our materials palette is on the top left and largely the same, I believe, as what we presented the last time. So we're proposing gravel in the driveway and then through many of the areas of the backyard and surrounding the house, we are in high fire. So we're looking to implement sort of planted gravel areas around the house and in particular the backyard. So it's, again, pretty loose, informal plantings and gravel rather than bark mulch. Permeable pavers are there. The color, of course, looks terrible in this image, but it's sort of a blend. And what we'd want to do is tumble them so that they have more of a natural look. And then that's the pattern there, the random running bond. Wood decking on the back, and then all of the paths in the front yard, not all of them, but down around the meadow, we're looking at doing stabilized earthen paths. So it's really just stabilized dirt, very informal. And then you can see our fence imagery, fences and gates. Those kind of speak to the details that we're looking to implement for the fences and gates. Precast concrete steppers, those are happening in the backyard and those will coordinate with the pool coping. And then along the bottom, Cherokee Creek flagstone in and around the backyard and on the front terrace. We're going to be implementing boulders as the cheek walls around the stairs. So that's that second image there on the bottom left. And then any of the stairs along the informal paths in and around the meadow, and then on the upper part of the back slope, we'll have landscape timbers for those stairs. So again, pretty informal. And then Santa Barbara sandstone walls. And we have 2 types. One is a little bit more refined and one is, sort of more rugged and boulder bank walls on the right. So you can just, if you could move to the right, and then I'll just quickly touch on the landscape or the plant palette. So we had 2 different color schemes going, one for the front and one for the back. Our client wants to name this property Marmonte, so we're looking at sort of an ocean type beachy feel in the front yard, and then more of a mountain view, kind of wine country feel in the backyard on the bottom. So slightly different colors on each. And then let's go to the next page. We've also had Bill Spiewak, arborist, out to the site to do a full inventory of the trees. And you can see anything that has an X would be a removal, and the others that just have a circle and are indicated with a light green color, those will remain. So there's a number of trees on this property. Most of the X trees or removals in the backyard are just volunteers. We have 2 significant ash trees on the southwest corner of the house. Those will remain. And those are the largest circles on the southwest corner of the house. And so there's little volunteers from those trees kind of scattered around the property. And then otherwise, there's a big ficus tree in the front patio right now that we'll be removing, and a couple of yuccas, nothing significant. The most important trees kind of line the perimeter on the southwest corner of the property. So you can see there's a line of palm trees. Those will remain. Those are like 40-foot tall Washingtonias. And then there's another stand of those around kind of the south, just south of the meadow along Braemar. And then there's a number of pine trees and a couple of oaks along Braemar Drive, and those will all remain in place. Next page. Lastly, our lighting plan. So the intent is to keep the landscape lighting very minimal. You can see our fixture selections on the right. The first fixture is our path light. And we just have those sort of scattered around, mostly focused on where the important kind of primary walkways are. And then a couple of downlights, hanging fixtures that will be in the trellises and hanging from the trees. We're lucky we have some big trees on this property, so we can do that. And the others are just step lights and path lights. So the one in the middle on the bottom, that's just a really tiny, I think it's like a 2 or 3 inch diameter fixture. So that would go just set in the boulders on either side of the stairs. And I believe that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's, we're available for any questions and certainly with comments.
Okay, great. Just to let everyone know, we're kind of like an hour behind, so I'm sure everyone has important questions and comments, so just want to make everyone aware. So Ted, did you have something to say? And I apologize, Michael, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just.
No, we hear you, and we got started late too, so we just wanted to cover everything. Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Chair, if the presentation is concluded, then we can open up the meeting to public comment for comments on this item. So if you are a member of the public and you would like to comment on this project, go ahead and click the raised hand icon as indicated on the screen. We will call on you and you will have 2 minutes to speak. I'm looking at the attendees in the audience and I don't see anyone with a raised hand. And Mr. Chair, I can confirm that there's no written public comment for this item at this time.
All right, great. Thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. So let's bring it back to the board. So if everyone could bring their beautiful faces onto the screen. I'll go down the list for anyone who has questions. Lisa, James, do you have any questions? Okay. All right. Jan Farrell, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. First of all, so you mentioned in the landscape plan these 3 large oak trees. Are those existing or are those going to be newly planted?
Those are newly planted.
Okay, but are there oaks on the property that are existing that are going to stay?
Yes, I believe there's 3.
Okay, next, when you were showing the palette of your plants, what is what is the meadow that you're going to be planting that's at the southern portion where that main driveway used to exist? Could you zoom in on that, please, Timmy?
I think she's thinking of the overall landscape plan.
Right, but Courtney mentioned that it's going to be kind of a meadow type grassy mixed area, and I'm just kind of curious about what that is gonna be.
Sure, Board Member Farrell, thanks. It's going to be a custom mix from S&S Seeds. So I have the list, the actual list that we're looking at for all of those plants. It would be Achillea, Coreopsis, California poppy, a couple of Fistucas, etc.
Okay, so a mix of flowers in there too.
Yeah.
And is that all going to be, and that will all be on with a sprinkler system or something?
We haven't designed the irrigation system yet, but I imagine that area would probably have spray just because of the size.
Right.
And ideally, you know, over time, it's just, you know, we can turn the irrigation off. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Holliday, you mentioned in your discussion about the double doors that go into from the garage in the back. Is that just access because there's no other access to the back as that big area in the back? And you have double doors both sides.
Yeah, yeah, good comment, Board Member Motisha. So we've got there you go, that's a good one. The elevation that everyone will see, of course, is the west elevation on the bottom right, which is more of your typical roll-up door. The other side was they want to be able to have this as a space they can use for more than just parking cars. So the idea was that these large sliding barn doors on the east side of the building can be rolled open, and they can, set up a ping pong table inside of there if they want, if they're up there by themselves, just to do something else gives us a lot more flexibility with that space. So that's essentially, the doors are different on either side. One have a roll-up sectional garage door with windows as is shown on the lower right hand, and then on the upper right hand, there's large sliding doors that would be, a design built out of the recycled barnwood.
That's all my questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Richards, any questions?
I just had one simple question. I see you're proposing solar panels, and are those going to be screened from visibility from the street, or I didn't see any more information on what they are.
Yes, if you look at, I'll let you talk about this, Courtney. We've talked about this quite a bit, and that's the best location that we could come up with for the solar panels, which would be screened back behind the 6-foot-high fence, and are kind of uniquely positioned on a south-facing slope, and would also not be visible from either the street, so both from Braemar and from Yankee Farm, you're not going to see them, but also you won't see them from the house. So we've kind of been out to the site and tried to locate them in the sunniest southwest corner of the site that's open right now. So, Courtney, you can comment any further if you want.
No, that covers it.
All right, thank you. That was my question.
Thank you. Board Member Sweeney, any questions?
Yeah, just a few. On the elevations of the house, on the photographs, there's an existing chimney flue that comes out of the existing roof. Is that being taken out or replaced or go away?
Yeah. Yes, we are cleaning, Board Member Sweeney. Yes, we are. What's there right now is just a flue sticking straight up, and we're kind of reworking that to try to tie it into something that looks a bit more consistent with the architecture. What was put in is literally the cheapest thing you could install. So we do want to keep if you look at that little, look at one of the other elevations there. We do want to keep that fireplace in that area, and I think, yeah, there it is. So that little structure right there, that little piece, what if, maybe look on the elevation. I think we called that out because we're talking about making something that's more consistent. Yeah, there we go. It's existing to remain. So maybe those are value engineering solution. So right now, yeah,
And then,
existing form, that's going to be existing to remain unless we need to clad it.
okay, thank you. The trash cans, this is maybe a question for Ted. Does this property come under the new zoning ordinance, or is it in the coastal where it doesn't come into the new zoning ordinance?
Board Member Sweeney, this property is located in the coastal zone. So that is not the new zoning ordinance.
Yeah, so under the old zoning ordinance, they weren't allowed the trash cans in the front yard setback. But are we allowed as a review board to let them do that, or do they have to adhere to the older zoning code because of where they are?
The code requirement will, so the board can comment on the location and the aesthetic appropriateness of having the trash cans there. However, the project is subject to the municipal code and those requirements. The trash receptacles were not identified as a completeness item in the completeness review that was done on this project. So if it would be helpful to the board, I can look into the zoning requirements for those trash cans and get back to you on that. But as far as I understand currently, there's no zoning regulation against those trash cans being located there.
Okay, thank you. And then, let's see, the 6-foot high fence. One of the things that's prevalent in this whole neighborhood is many people have either gotten approval or not gotten approval and putting 6-foot or higher fences right on the property lines around their properties, up and down Yankee Farm Road and the other parallel streets. So is the 6-foot high fence that Courtney shared, is that allowed? Do we have to make any review that it's taller than 42 inches? Or is it okay? Because that's a question.
Mr. Sweeney, in the new zoning ordinance, that fence being located in the front yard and being over 3.5 feet in height would be a trigger for single family design board review. If it's within 10 feet of the lot line in the new zoning ordinance, then it would require a minor zoning exception. However, in Title 28 of the municipal code, where this subject property is located, the process is a ministerial administrative exception to allow items like that within 10 feet of the front lot line. So in other words, the board doesn't have purview over those items like the board does in Title 30.
Okay, thank you. And then the 2 spaces that are provided on Yankee Farm Road I was trying to make out from what do you have? One sheet that shows the house across the street. I don't know what sheet that's on. I was just trying to figure out where those 2 spaces are, where the relationship to the garage that's on the opposite side of the street, because that's a home we reviewed and gave approval to for remodeling, et cetera, and their garage is over the right of way or over the setback. And I couldn't remember where it was just in relationship to that garage. I don't know if that's.
Mr. Chair, you could take a look at the tree protection plan in our set, and you can just see the corner of that building there.
Oh, okay, right there. So the 2 parking spaces are where on your side? Down a little further or directly?
They're sort of directly across from it, and potentially that's. I thought we had a plan that showed both.
Okay.
Actually, go to the lighting plan, the following sheet. And you can see, again, it's much lighter.
Yeah, kind of. Okay. I was just concerned about a conflict, potential conflict of somebody backing out of that garage on that narrow road, and then you got two cars parked there. So that's the only reason I asked. Let's see. And then finally, the easy one is this a San Luis Obispo cow in the meadow? And is the flagpole a white flagpole?
It's a dairy cow out there, and it's been part of the friendly livestock kept out there. So I don't know. I'd have to have my wife, who's an animal science major, tell me which kind it is. But yeah, it's a dairy cow and a little.
Okay. Yeah, a few years ago, San Luis Obispo had a huge fundraiser where they had painted cows that you now find all over the county done by artists. So that's why I asked you. But the flagpole is white, correct? And is that existing flagpole or is that a new flagpole?
They're both existing, Mr. Chair. Both the flagpole and the cow are existing.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Fred. Board Member Ziegler, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a couple. Ms. Miller did a presentation on the landscaping, and it looked like, if I understood correctly, there were a lot of X's for trees being removed. And I'd like to understand a little bit about those removals. Yeah. What are these dead trees? What's the point of removing them?
Thank you, Board Member Ziegler. If Timmy could zoom in on, some of those X'd out trees in the rear yard, I can cover that. So a number of these are just located right where we want to put the pool, in the backyard. And as I mentioned, they're mostly volunteers. So the big clump that's right in the middle of the backyard, we have acacias and ash trees, and I believe there's a Brazilian pepper tree volunteers, and they're all pretty small, insignificant, and they're just sort of they're in the wrong spot. So those need to come out. The important things we are keeping, like the oak trees, and there's an existing stand of yuccas that are pretty mature along the east property line. Just to the east side of the existing house, there's a cluster of Schefflera and other tropicals. A lot of what's surrounding the house looks to me like houseplants that were just stuck in the ground and got really big. So nothing really significant. And I'll give you the totals, which are just to the right on the plan. We have 24 removals, 51 protect in place, and 36 new trees that we're proposing.
Okay. My other question is about the steel roof on the garage. You're not doing a steel roof on the house. Can you explain a little bit why you want the steel roof on the garage? I know it's a different style building, but tell me a little bit about your thinking.
Yeah, thank you, Board Member Ziegler. This image I'm going to hold up right here is kind of shows, I don't know if you can see that, the standing seam metal roof.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's consistent on that, and it kind of lines, the reason that we wanted to, it's a dark bronze, kind of color, medium bronze perhaps, I think we called it out. But the idea was with this building and this site, actually, it has been through 4 different phases of development, and they never really reflect the original the original structure was in the 20s and the 30s, is probably the best examples of some architecture. So we're trying to make this as a kind of self-contained barn structure, just the way you would build it. And so instead of doing asphalt shingles, which is, we have a lot of options. We didn't want to do a corrugated metal. That was another thing that we considered. So the standing seam metal roof seemed to be sort of the most consistent architectural solution that would be complementary to the weathered barn siding, and that wasn't going to create a big reflective surface there for the neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Courtney, just to let you know, Fred is not the chair anymore. I am, but not that that makes any difference, but
It's still.
Oh,
getting-
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Apologies.
Well, anyway, no big deal. I have no questions at this time, so I'm going to go to comments unless Ted, do you have something to say?
Yes, very quickly, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to further answer Mr. Sweeney's question from before about the waste receptacle enclosure.
Yes.
The item was mentioned on completeness letter sent to the applicant. However, it was a minor correction just to relocate the waste receptacles out of the secondary front yard. And the applicable municipal code section is 28.87.190. The receptacles appear to encroach approximately 6 feet into the front setback, and they're only allowed to encroach 3 by that section of the code. So just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go into comments. Board member James. Oh, Jan, yes, question, sorry.
Well, question, just following up. So are they going to need a modification for those trash receptacles, Ted?
If they are, so if they are proposed in that location, then yes. However, you know, it was assumed in the application completeness process that they will be redesigned to be located out of the front setback prior to final approval.
Yes, Chair Miller, if I can comment on that item specifically. Yeah, we liked them so that they weren't connected to the architecture or the front of the house. It's probably not going to be visible anyway, but you can see where the storage room is set back from the garage structure. We can rotate those 90 degrees and put them up against the side of the building there, and you're probably not going to see them anyway. So we can easily accommodate that requirement.
All right, thank you. So let's go into comments, please. Board member Lisa James.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller. My comments would be positive. I appreciate the reduction in FAR and the common sense idea of just saving a lot of money and not putting a standing seam metal roof on the existing structure. And I also want to have positive comments toward using the alternate materials on the garage barn. And lastly, the landscape plan is looking fabulous, Courtney, and it will be a huge improvement to that neighborhood. I spend a lot of time there. And also to assure Mr. Ziegler, all the trees that are coming out are really just really trash trees. And they need, a lot of sprouts and unnecessary trees. So yes, positive comments from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Board member Farrell, comments?
I just would like to follow up with what Lisa said. I am in favor of this project, and I think the landscape plan is phenomenal. I especially like your use of that swale along that back slope area there for your stormwater management, and then another section in the front. I think those are a really nice way to help to get the water back down into ground level. I also think that the garage/barn is a nice little addition, even though it doesn't match exactly with the house. I think I find it very acceptable, and with the standing seam metal roof as well, and very supportive of the project.
All right, thank you, Jen. Board member Richards, do you have any comment? Oh, I skipped you. I'll get back to you, Joe. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in support of the project as well. The plans are really well developed, and then I wanted to commend them on bringing the extra parking spots to the street, because I thought that was an issue brought up at a previous meeting. So I'm in support of it, and that's my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board member Motisha, any comments?
Yes, I like the barn. I like the fact that the property is a very big piece of property. And all of a sudden we have a barn that looks like a barn. Doesn't, and especially what you replaced it with. A flat I guess a 3-car garage, flat roof. I also have a comment about the parking on Yankee Farm Road. I know one of the meetings we came to, one of the first ones we came to, that you presented, the whole neighborhood was up in arms about you eliminating all the parking along there and all these big pieces of property and the parties that we're going to have, and all of a sudden your landscaping went all the way out to, I don't know, I've forgotten whether it included something that was already there, landscaping that was already there, but it eliminated all the parking, and you've put 2 parking places there. Those are going to be probably taken up all the time by your guests or your owners, who that's the easiest and fastest way into the front door. I don't know, I support the project. It's a big piece of project. The landscaping is great. Courtney, you have probably had a hard time filling that whole piece of property up. And the fact you took out that big, huge driveway in the front of the property and made it landscaping. It's too bad you had to hide it behind a fence the whole way around. I guess it'll grow up above 6 feet, or if it already has. Yes, in general, I like the project. I will support it.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Board Member Sweeney.
Yes, I concur with my colleagues. Just a little bit further on the architectural approach. As a person who spends my time now sketching and watercoloring pastoral farm and ranch scenes from the Midwest all the way out to the Pacific Coast, I can understand clearly why this approach was taken. It's a similar approach that I took several years ago at a brand new house up in Paso Robles, where I did exactly the same thing, designed a home and the outbuildings look at as if they were built at different times. And it was for a client who was a Disney animator who did the original animations for Cinderella. So it was quite a project, and so I appreciate what they're doing here. The only thing I might suggest, and it's not part of any project design approval statement, is on the barn. Typically where the windows are at the gable ends, those would have been louvered openings in a barn. And many farm sites you would have seen, rather than standing seam, you would have seen the corrugated steel roofs, but that would be my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sweeney. Board Member Ziegler, any comments?
Yeah, I've been thinking through this whole thing that the 2 presentations were remarkably detailed, thorough, and constructive, and especially removing that front area where the driveway was. So I'm very much in favor of what they're trying to do, and that's pretty much what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to echo what everyone else said. I support the project. I think it's going to be a huge improvement for that lot, and very, very showstopper kind of project. So with that being said, let's say they're here for project design approval. So if someone would like to entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, to keep things moving, I'll go ahead and do a motion. We'd like to give this project design approval. That this project meets the neighborhood compatibility in terms of its scale, size, and bulk, in as much as that the bulk of the existing buildings are not being radically changed, that the board appreciates the architectural aging of the site with the architectural approach for the implementation of a new garage with a standing seam metal roof, that the board has reviewed in detail the proposed landscaping plan and finds the landscaping approach, including designation of trees that need to be removed, as acceptable, that the general palette of materials is compatible with other materials and the history of the neighborhood. That has been preserved, that the general health, safety, welfare has been approached, particularly with the inclusion of 2 additional parking spaces in the road right-of-way on the westerly side of the property, and that in general the property does not impede any public views as it sits within the neighborhood. And I would designate the neighborhood as being the generally understood Bramer Ranch neighborhood that is off of Cliff Drive, if I've got the roads right. And let's see, Ted, do we need to do any other items in that motion?
Mr. Sweeney, the hillside design and sloped lot findings apply, and then we'll also need to announce the 10-day appeal period.
Okay, and that part of the motion is that we have reviewed the grading, the site grading is minimal, and that there's no extensive grading or disturbance to the overall shape of the site as it exists. And yes, Mr. Miller, you can announce the 10-day appeal period, but that's my motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
All right, Jen Farrell. Thank you. All right, can I, and there is a 10-day appeal period for this project. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. This is Mary. I will take the roll call vote. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha, Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney, and Board Member Ziegler.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, I've got a little, are you open to a little break? My bladder is kind of saying something to me that I should take care of it. So can we take a quick break and be back at 5:40?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to convene the board and we're going to reconvene at 5:40, please. Thank you. we are ready. We're all here. Okay, so I'm reconvening the meeting, and all right, for item number 3, this is a continued item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. It's a proposal for a 775 square foot of additions to an existing 1,772 square foot single unit residence with a 420 square foot carport. Proposal includes demolition of existing deck, removal of existing carport, removal of existing atrium, and removal of roof to be replaced with a new roof configuration. Project also includes a new 456 square foot attached 2-car garage with a 456 square foot accessory dwelling unit at the second level for a total of 912 square foot of accessory space. The new 827 square foot deck with guardrails, new doors and windows, new siding, and a new trash enclosure are also proposed. The proposed total of 3,459 square feet of development on 15,883 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District is 79% of the guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested. On June 17th, 2020, the project received staff hearing officer approval for zoning modification to allow encroachments in the front setback and the increase in roof height in the interior setback. Project requires substantial conformance to the plans that receive staff hearing officer approval. Project requires neighborhood preservation and hillside design and slope lot findings. Project was last reviewed December 9th, 2019. Are there representatives to the project here? I see Dylan. Hi, Dylan.
Yes, Dylan. Yes.
If you'd like to present your project, please.
Mr. Miller?
Oh, wait.
So Dylan Henderson.
Hold on a second. Fred, do you have something to say? Hold on.
Yeah. Can we see the list of our comments from the last review, please?
Took the words right out of my mouth. There you go.
Thank you.
So these are the minutes from the last time. So if Dylan, if you can kind of address your comments to these notes, that'd be appreciated.
Sure, absolutely. No problem. So in going through the plans, I don't have this right in front of me, the 1 through 9. So, okay, that's fine. So starting my presentation. So if we can go to, well, I guess just the cover page, page 1 of the PDF. None of the information has changed. Obviously, we've been through a couple of design review meetings at this point. I've been through archaeological review. I've been through the tree plan review, which was extensive with the oaks that we're keeping on site. And obviously went all the way through the modification meeting and the staff hearing officer meeting, and that was all approved. And so this is our last step here in our process. One of the comments was, well, I guess go to page 7 of the PDF if we could. That's the material samples board. So one of the comments was, can you provide material samples? And so I just wanted to go through this very quickly of the materials we're proposing on the exterior of the structure. And so we have a smooth plaster. So second up from the lower right corner, we're thinking just a light gray matching this pavilion gray sample of a smooth stucco. Above that is a 1x6 shiplap cedar, which would be stained black on the accessory dwelling unit. And above that would be the 1x6 shiplap ipe, which would be on the main house. And so currently those are the 3 materials on the exterior that we're proposing. The fascia of this flat roof is going to be a color old zinc gray fascia on the high roof. We've talked about the garage doors being glass. The windows and doors right now are proposed as a aluminum clad package from Pella, and we would be doing black anodized aluminum on the exterior for the color. The new deck, which is basically replacing the footprint of the old deck, would be done in Trex decking. The color is this gravel path, which is sort of a gray. The wood trellis, we would be staining to match the ipe. And then the steel railing on the exterior of the deck at the rear of the house would be steel painted black. And then the planter walls up front would be exposed board formed concrete. And so that currently is our color palette that we've been working through. If you go to page 9 of the PDF, one of the things in getting to final that we had to get around, and certainly going through the staff hearing officer meeting, was to get through our civil plan. And our civil plan is fairly extensive on this site because we are hillside, we are tier 3. And so we had to capture all of our water from our roof drains and get them down into planters and percolation areas where we could get that water into the ground. It's been reviewed extensively by Creeks, Praxis, Mario, Bertinelli plan for us. And this has worked out great. We're keeping all of the water from our site on our site. But what it ended up doing was pushing us to redesign a little bit of the planter configuration at the front of the site, because we need all of that for our drainage, essentially, for these bioretention basins. And so if you zoom in on this sheet toward the front, where you have the planters showing, each one of those has a detail called out back to the detail sheet. And so, right, exactly. So we're having to, where we have our, the green strip essentially at our sidewalk, that green strip comes up, that soil gets mitigated, and then we have mulch placed on top of it so it can absorb all of that water. Where we have the basin right in front of the house, that has a whole soils configuration that has to happen. If we're interested, we can look at the detail of how they're doing that. But what it forced was sort of a very simple planting plan at the front of the house. Those planters are simply going to have grasses in them that keep it very light and not root heavy, so it doesn't get in the way of that. And the grasses proposed for that would be the Limus canonstatus, the canyon prince is what it's called, as a proposed grass that would go in that front planter. And then very simple landscaping from there, because we really can't do very much because of the amount of stormwater that we're picking up in this location. And so we have a trench drain in front of the garage, obviously, then this large planter. We have pervious concrete for the steps that are going up to the front door. That will all be pervious so water can get through it. And then new curb cut and concrete going down to the garage and the ADU location. From there, if we go to sheet 12 of the PDF, if you're interested, that's the bioretention details of how we're handling that in each one of those planters, and then showing why we have to have such light touch landscaping so we don't have heavy root structures getting in the way of any of that permeability of the soils. The next sheet, page 13 of the PDF, shows our site plan. And there was the staff hearing officer wanted 3 new 15-gallon oak trees, which are going to be placed down on the lower bench. And you can see where those 3 oak trees are being located. The oak trees that we have on site are very much going to remain. It's the 2 large ones that were really of the biggest concern during our last meeting, and certainly have now become very important to the client as well. Bill Spiewak is probably going to be the one who ends up with this contract during the staff hearing officer meeting. She's requiring that the 3 specialists, Bill in this case, would be contracted prior to the start of construction, and that that his firm essentially would be doing the on-site supervision to make sure that those tree structures stay, the root structures of those trees stay very much protected and generally intact during the course of construction. That's very clear and also very desired by the clients as well. So that sort of addresses that. The next page of the PDF, page 14, is our floor plan. Nothing has changed in the floor plan since our previous meeting. other than just, you know, furthering details and things like that. Page 15 of the PDF, and this is our roof plan. And on our roof plan, we have several solar tubes to bring light into the interior spaces of these rooms. And then we have several skylights proposed. This is all on a flat roof, and these are all flat, non-operable skylights. So visually, there won't be an impact. You won't be able to see them from the street. So that's our proposed roof plan as it stands now. If you go to page 18 of the PDF, we'll be able to reference back to the elevations. And the next two pages, page 18 and 19, just give you a visual of the elevations that as they're designed. And I wanted to point out, one of the comments was to look structurally at the deck to see how we would be addressing that and to be as light as possible about it for the cross canyon view, which I think Mr. Sweeney brought up in our last meeting. And that has now been structurally designed. Those will be supported on individual caissons with steel tube. And then we'll have a very light cross bracing of steel, round steel, just rounded steel rod that is braced between those uprights. And it's going to be very light and delicate as possible. And that is very much what it will look like. And that's structurally how we've made that work. And so a bit of work there, but I think it will visually be very attractive from across the canyon. On these pages, you can see what our dark sky exterior sconce fixtures look like as they're proposed. And then when we get to page 21 of the PDF, each of these sheets going through page, essentially through page 23, has our exterior detailing and our fascia detailing. And so very simple fascia detail. We're going to do a metal wrapped fascia. You're not going to see the roof, obviously. So just a simple metal wrapped fascia with a very simple soffit on the underside, which will be 1x T&G wood soffit that gets painted. And then we'll have either smooth stucco on the exterior face of the wall or the wood siding per the exterior elevations. So something very clean, very simply detailed, and tonally very, similar to what we have. Not very many different colors going on this building. Let's see, when you go to page 22 of the PDF, that shows you the exterior deck rail and how we're proposing doing that. The client has grandchildren, so wanted to make sure that those posts are, the intermediary balusters and newels are all vertical so that nobody can climb up that railing. And obviously it'll be attached securely to the deck. And then when we get further into this PDF, I did include the structural drawings just for reference if anybody has any structural questions of how any of this is being accomplished. But obviously a very solid pass at the structural at this point to verify that all of our conditions can be built the way we architecturally have designed them. And I feel good about where we are. So I hope that answered all of the 9 questions. I believe that it did. But that's the end of my presentation and open for questions.
All right, thank you. Ted, did we get any public comment or emails?
Mr. Chair, there is no written public comment at this time for this project. And if there are any attendees, members of the public who would like to comment on this project, please do so by clicking on the raise hand icon on the GoToWebinar control panel. It's a quiet day on the webinar again, so it looks like we don't have any members of the public who wish to speak. We can go on to questions from the board.
All right, thank you. So I'll just go down the list. Board member James, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Board Member Miller. On the west elevation, I don't recall the, it was a slide that had a rendering that showed the slope in the deck. It was one of the last slides you showed us. Anyway, I was curious about the planting on the west slope. Yeah, that one. Do you plan to do any landscaping in the area that you have shown there in gray?
So down below the deck, we really won't be able to do much. I mean, really what the fire department wants is that relatively clean of any, they don't even want mulch underneath those decks and things like that. The site really gets very, very steep below that portion. And so that's going to be just left to be native and very much untouched. And right now it has a mix of, foxtail and things like this and poison oak, honestly. That's really, and it gets very steep after at where those vertical deck supports are. And so we really won't be touching that hillside below that area.
Okay, that makes sense. And poison oak will do a nice job of protecting it from humans and everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Next question, near the oak tree on the west side of the house where you're putting the retention basin, was that part of the last iteration of the project, that retention basin? I'm sorry, I don't recall.
No, it wasn't, because we didn't have our tier 3 done. One of the requirements for the modification meeting was to complete the tier 3 storm. And so that was an add in order to get through that modification meeting. So that retention basin was added by the civil engineer. And that's something that obviously we'll work with Bill Spivak on to make sure that that's something.
That was my next question. Will Bill Spivak be involved? And so now that you've dropped his name, I'll not ask that question. And that's the end of my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Board Member Farrell, any questions?
I have no questions at this time.
Thank you. Board Member Motisha, any questions?
Yes. Is there a basement story underneath the underneath the garage?
There, that's just a crawl space.
Is that from the east elevation? I'm looking at the east elevation you just showed. It looks like there's half of a window right there, down the lower, no, not that one, the other one, the other elevation. See, right underneath the garage, there looks like some opening glass doors with a deck there. Is that just open space underneath the garage?
Oh, so the first level there is the garage level, and underneath the stair going up to the ADU is where the trash bin is going to be.
Right there. What is that?
That's a trash bin.
Oh,
trash.
okay.
Yeah.
You can walk around the northwest side of the property and come back up to the driveway level. Walk to the right.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, you can circulate on the deck from around the ADU and the garage to grade. That's correct.
On the right there, what is that trellis? Looks like a trellis over a door.
Well, that's the deck. You go up to the ADU, you go up the stairs, and you land on the landing outside of the ADU door. Is that what you mean?
On the right. Right there.
Yeah, that's a trellis over the garage doors, facing the street.
Over the garage doors. I thought the garage doors were up at, I got the ceiling of the garage doors, the ceiling of that wing right there.
Go up one page, go to page 18, and I'll clarify this for you. So if you look on the left-hand side of the page there, those two garage doors, there's a wood trellis over it. That's what you were seeing.
So there's a second story on top of the garage.
Yes, that's the accessory dwelling unit.
That's the accessory dwelling unit. Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm reading.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Show the opposite elevation of this one again, right here, that we're looking at. Show the back. I see. Okay. All right.
Oh.
Now I see it. Okay. Very good. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Board Member Richards, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. At the entry to the house, to the right of it, there's a tree symbol. I'm just wondering, trying to look at the photos. Is that big, like existing Hollywood juniper? That's
yeah, that's yeah. It's the existing tree, and as of right now, we didn't have it proposed to be removed. It's there. It's a mature tree. It shades the house. So as of now, we're just putting it in place.
Okay. And then the only other planting that you're talking about is what's happening in the bioretention plant, or where you're going to do the grasses?
That's correct.
Okay. Those were my two questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Board Member Sweeney, questions?
Yeah, just two. The 3 oaks that the staff hearing officer had you put in, what was the rationale behind that? Did she indicate, or he?
Yeah. So I think that the rationale was that I don't have a great answer for that. We're not impacting. I do have to prune these oaks a bit, just for their own health. Honestly, people said you need to prune them up a bit. There is one branch on the oak by the new garage accessory dwelling unit that will get trimmed back. And so when we said, well, we're going to have to trim one of the limbs on that oak back, sort of made the 3 oaks a condition of approval. And I can't really tell you exactly. It felt a bit arbitrary in terms of the number of oaks that we had to plant, but it was a condition that she placed on the project.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking, I'm a little confused. One is you've got a big oak right next to the deck that we've all looked at, we've reviewed, et cetera, and you've got another oak up to the west of the house. This property abuts the city park and that ravine, which is in all purposes, that's probably a high fire area in terms of catching on fire and swooping down the canyon towards City College. So why would somebody want to put more oaks in here? They're going to grow as big as the ones that have been there. Yeah, it might be there because they wanted to hide the underpinning of the deck, which you've slimmed down at our request. So I'm a little confused about that. And yeah, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, particularly because of the fire hazard of planting 3 oaks down in that canyon when the whole canyon's full of oaks. So I don't know. Ted, is that something that this board could say, no, we're in disagreement with the staff hearing officer's proposal? I mean, if the client doesn't really want to do these?
Mr. Sweeney, the board can make comments as to the aesthetics of the project, and that does include, making comments that may oppose another discretionary body. However, I believe the staff hearing officer approval needs to be followed for project design approval. In other words, we reviewed these plans, staff reviewed these plans so that they substantially conform to the plans that were reviewed by the staff hearing officer. So it could potentially require another hearing of the staff hearing officer to alter that approval.
Irma, the staff hearing officer's procedure has a 10-day appeal period, does it not?
Correct. Mr. Chair and Board Member Sweeney, the staff hearing officer has reviewed the project, approved the modifications with the condition of the trees. It was not appealed, therefore the condition stands. The only recourse would be to ask for a condition, amendment to the condition, and that would take a process.
Okay. So in essence, because our board was not given the opportunity to comment on the staff hearing officer or had no knowledge of what the decision was, we were kind of past that time to deal with it. Okay, that answers my question. And then the final question is, this project, at least on the notice we got earlier, says it's here for project design approval. But the slide that came up earlier said project design approval and final approval. What are we allowed to do today? See, that one says project design and final, but on the notice we got earlier on Thursday, it's project design approval. So what are we allowed to do or not do?
Mr. Sweeney, I'm looking at the agenda that was posted, and the posted agenda does indicate that project design approval and final approval are requested.
Final approval.
Oh, it's up there. Okay. It's just down in the list part. It says project design approval is. So if we wanted to, we can give this final approval also. Correct?
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So then that precipitates a third question to Mr. Henderson. Based on what you've shown us, shared with us, including the civil engineering drawings, it appears you are in a position, your drawings are ready to go to the building department, are they not?
Yeah, I feel very good about it. I think there's a couple of things that I'd want structural, just a final detail for me. But other than that, I feel like we're very far along. And I think that's the inherent with the process of going through the modification is that you have to get your drawings very, very far along. So you're sort of wringing your hands, hoping that the SHO is going to give you an approval because you put in a lot of work to get to that meeting. So yeah, I do feel ready to go to permit very quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, ordinarily, we could sit at the desk and I would thumb through these drawings just to satisfy myself that they look like a complete set of architectural drawings. We're not able to do that because we have to look at these things on our little computer laptops. Okay, thank you. That's all for my question.
Board member Ziegler, do you have any questions?
Nope, no questions on this one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have no questions at this time either, so I'll bring it back to the board and we'll go down the list again. Board member James, do you have any comments? And you're muted, Lisa.
My comments would be,
I can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My comments would be that I'd be interested to revisit the idea of the oaks being planted, if that can be a
Uh-oh, we lost you.
whatever Irma referred to, a process, or not. But otherwise, I fully.
I'm sorry, Lisa, you're
I'm
going
sorry,
out.
I'm having audio problems today.
Yeah, is that Ted? Is that us or Lisa?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I didn't hear much of what Board Member James said. Unfortunately, she may have to restate in kind of general terms what she said.
Please, Lisa.
Do you hear me now?
Kinda.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wrote, yes, okay, you can hear me now. I approve of the project and I apologize for my audio being inconsistent. I'm going to try and get a new router from Cox.
We're all doing the best we can with the remote meeting setting, so don't worry about it.
All right. Board Member Farrell, any comments?
I just could say that I'm definitely in support of this project, and I like the color palette that you brought to us, and that's it.
All right, thank you. Board Member Motisha, any comment?
Yes, I like the project. I think it fits our criteria very well. Great modernization, let's call it a modernization of that house that was built 40 years ago, most likely. I agree with, I think Lisa said something about the trees. I live in a house that owns a big ravine like this, and I don't need to plant anything down there. It just grows wild. And requiring 3 massive oak trees, and you already have an oak tree that basically covers that whole northwest corner of the house. Putting 3 oak trees there is just basically adding more vegetation to the ravine, which it doesn't need. It's going to naturally grow down there. But other than that, the project is very, very well done and very well detailed. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member. Board Member Richards, any comments?
Yeah, I agree with the previous comments. I think it's a great project. It does seem rather goofy to be forced to have to plant these oak trees down on that slope where probably aren't doing much for you. But yeah, my only other comment was, I don't know if that Hollywood juniper in the front of the home is something that I would want to be featured in front of this nice new home, but I guess that's where you're at with it. So in general, I support the project, and I think it's going to look great. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Sweeney, comments?
Yes, I'm ready to this project design approval and final. But a question to Mr. Henderson. We've all talked about our concern about the 3 oak trees. I'm assuming your client just wants to get ahead and get this into the building department and doesn't want to fight the 3 trees. Is that an accurate summation?
I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is an example of why people are so upset about the city review process and permitting process. That, you know, this kind of stuff just drags on and inhibits people. So yes, it's unfortunate that a decision was made without an ability to have this board's input, but that's the way it is. So I'm supporting moving ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Sweeney. Board Member Ziegler, any comments?
Oh, I'm okay with the project. I generally agree with what Jan Farrell says, so I'm going to stick with that.
Okay, thank you. So I have something to say, and I've been thinking about this, so I don't want it to sound like I'm against the project or it's an opinion of the project. But I think it needs to be brought to light. And I feel uncomfortable with this project, not because it's not badly designed, because I think it's beautifully designed, but I just wanted to know on record that it's a different style than what's in the existing neighborhood. And I believe what we are doing is we're changing this neighborhood from being a pretty much consistently ranch style, single story 60s homes into an eclectic neighborhood. So I think we're introducing a new style into this neighborhood. And I'm a little uncomfortable if you look at sheet A 1.2A, how the house is adjacent to the next door neighbor house. The plate height is considerably higher. So that's just something that we're allowing to go through. And so I'm uncomfortable with that, but I don't think it's fair to the client to go back and rehash it. We've already proved it, and I'm definitely of the minority, which is perfectly fair, but I just wanted to make those comments. So with that being said, I'd like to entertain a motion. And I guess if this motion wants to for final approval too. So Fred said that's definitely something to do. So who would like to entertain a motion, please?
You ready to go ahead? I'm looking at Jan because you happen to be right in the middle of my screen.
Okay.
I would go ahead and make a motion for project design approval and final approval that the board has reviewed in detail the topography of the site and the significant location next to the city park, that we have determined that the contemporary design that's approached in previous discussions does in fact present an additional newer architectural style within this neighborhood, but that we have approved similar contemporary designs up the hill. That the scale of the building was addressed based on comments and concerns from the board at previous meetings, particularly as a relationship to the proportions between the main house and the garage and ADU unit. That, if we can flip to the next slide, please. That the board recognizes that the applicant, in working with Bill Seebeck and others, is going to make a significant effort to assure that the specimen oak trees that are on the site will be retained and protected. The board is concerned about the staff hearing officers, what at least for the moment appears to be a arbitrary decision to place 3 oak trees below that large oak tree, but finds that everything else is in order, particularly with the Tier 3 stormwater management plan. We can go to the next slide, please. And that the project in general does not present any health and safety welfare issues, in as much as it's been reviewed by street department and the fire department. That it's practiced good neighbor guidelines in our previous discussions, and that the project does not inhibit public views, particularly as the board has reviewed it from across the ravine and canyon and from the upper portion of this neighborhood. And if we can go to the vicinity map, we can define the neighborhood as depicted in this motion. Can we get to the vicinity map? I think that may have, yeah, there we go. That the neighborhood is generally reviewed as the Harbor Hills Drive neighborhood, as depicted from La Coronilla Drive on down through Harbor Hills to its dead end. And that's my motion.
Thank you, Fred. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Jen. All right, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, this is Mary. I will take the roll call vote. Chair Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair James,
Yes.
Board Member Farrell,
Yes.
Board Member Motisha,
Yes.
Board Member Richards,
Yes.
Board Member Sweeney,
Yes.
and Board Member Ziegler.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Mr.
Real
Chair,
quick,
before you adjourn.
Hold on,
You have to do the
We have a
10-day appeal period. I'm sorry.
We have a 10-day appeal period, and I wanted to clarify, this is for final, right? We granted it final, right? Okay, so Fred, what did you have to say?
Before we adjourn, I'm wondering, and this will be a question to staff, is there a way, or do we have to take a formal action, or are we not able to do this? Could we advise applicants that they really only have 20 to 25 minutes to make their presentations?
Yes.
Some of the presentations that we've seen are even longer than the ones I've observed at ABR, where they have a whole city block they're reviewing, a 4 or 5 story building. So I'm wondering, are we able to convey that to applicants, or is that not within our purview?
Mr. Sweeney, prior to scheduling the item on an agenda, staff will communicate with applicants expectations for remote meetings, and we do have a guideline PDF that we send out. So I believe in that PDF we do state that presentations should be limited to 15 to 20 minutes. And yeah, we do make an effort to try to set the expectations, but I know that everybody's busy right now, and those expectations might not be seen by some, and But this, it's a good reminder to keep, keep trying to set those expectations.
It's kind of understandable when we first see a project at concept review. Generally over the years, that's the meeting you probably do spend a considerable amount of time with the applicant and designer, because you're trying to, put your arms around the design and the project. But, the later visits where we've already reviewed stuff, unless somebody's forgotten some, shouldn't be able to tell the applicants to skip over and concentrate right to the list of the board's previous comments. Anyway, I hope that might speed things up in the future. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may just interject really quickly, we'd like to also empower the chair to basically announce that at the beginning. Announce that at the beginning. I think a lot of times what happens is that even though the applicants have been given that information and that direction, they forget, or we forget to remind them. Right. The other thing that we're contemplating, and maybe we'll bring this next time, is to actually set a timer on the slide, a small one, so that they know how much time they have to make their presentation. And also, really, if it is a larger project, if it is a concept review project where you think that maybe 15 minutes is not long enough, that it maybe warrants 20 or 25, that's okay too, but I think that expectation should be made at the beginning.
Brian, I'll give you a list of the people who like to talk.
Thank you. Lisa. Lisa's dying to say something. Hurry, Lisa.
I was next. Okay. And I'd like to add that if a board member has not been there for the previous review, that they take that responsibility to review it on their own and not waste the entire board's time having the applicant reiterate the project.
Okay, thank you. Joe, what quickly? Yes?
I was going to say, I'll give you a list of all those architects and designers who would like to talk.
Okay, so enough, please. I would like to conclude this single family design board and for July, whatever the date is, July 20th, 2020. Thank you very much.